All right, so the technical advisory committee today is made up of all of us. We've got Sean from the Department of Motor Vehicles. We've got Elise with Recreation Trails Program. We've got Courtney Bloomer with Travel Nevada and representing Commission on Tourism. Tammy Owens with the Bureau of Land Management. Randy Kais with the Forest Service, Humboldt-Toyabe. And Matt Maples with Nevada Division of Wildlife. I've also asked, I invited some folks from Endor, and then I also asked Yasmina, our GIS analyst, to join us, help us with the geographic diversity of these grants, I guess. All right, I figured everybody's at least opened the grants website and seen that we've got 11 up for grabs. What I'm sharing here is just where they're all accessed, and I've tried to put them all into one PDF. If you guys noticed any missing documents, then I'd like to just take notes on these and then follow up with you individually if I've actually received them and they're just saved in their project file, or if they're actually in that PDF. All right, I figured today we'd just go over all 11 grants from start to finish, and we'd reference, let me see if I can share the screen here. Sure. We'll reference each of these different tabs, and I've gone through and just made kind of basic comments. I've got some written comments here, but I just want everybody to kind of participate and really relate to how. Give me answers to how these written applications answered these 10 questions. And this is all relating to section 5. And then at the very end of each project review, then we'll just kind of discuss if it was complete and if it should be funded or not. After this meeting, I'll take care of any scoring or any defense items, and then kind of follow up with you guys as like the subject specialists. To create kind of like an airtight defense when we go to the OHV Commission. You guys have any questions? Sweet. All right, let's start with Farmies Off-Road Park. It's requesting funding for a well, a restroom, and some dirt work out in Yarrington. It would be a county managed property. Planning, environmental studies, and conservation. I personally think this is a really cool project. It's been a kind of goal for our OHV Commission to construct a lot of this infrastructure on county and city-owned properties, and then have people recreate on the public lands adjacent. I don't think that this grant has answered all of these Section 5 questions completely or thoroughly. So, what are the comments and concerns with the environmental studies or the consideration of the environmental impacts on the site?
How do we do we like, I don't know, do we raise our hand? Do we just start talking?
Yeah, let's just start talking.
Okay. I mean, I'm in agreement with you, Nikhil. I didn't feel like they answered all of the questions, and I felt like their answers were extremely brief when there was an answer. I would have liked a lot more information. I kind of had to extrapolate how this would be beneficial for environmental concerns and protection of or conservation of natural resources. Again, I agree with you. I think this would be a really cool project, and I think that I would recommend it for funding if it were my choice, but it was very lacking for me.
The one question I had was the 200,000 for the Mike Power, the builder. So is that just like the sole builder, and it's going to cost him $200,000? I just wanted, I guess, some more explanation. Like, why is it so expensive? And would there be any other builder that's competitive on price and quality to this $200,000 for Mr. Mike Power? And I did some Google. Is he like Google research? Is he like a off-road rider or racer? Do you guys know any?
I don't know.
And maybe that would be some more like, why is he justifying such a high price, you know what I mean? Like, is he just the best builder out there, you know? I don't know.
Okay.
It could also be the contingent, like it could be, and I'm not trying to defend the price tag by any stretch. I'm just trying to, I know with RTP we experience a lot of times, you know, especially in what they consider a remote area, they will add on a remote area fee because they have to go out so far.
Mhm.
And it, you know, and sometimes that can be up to 15 to 20% extra.
Yeah, yeah.
But I wouldn't think that Yerington would necessarily, like, I understand that in Caliente. Or Imlay,
Yerington's on a highway.
but I don't
Yeah.
feel like Yerington is that far out to
Justify
warrant something of that, if that would be a reasoning, you know?
Okay.
I also think it's a good idea. It should drive tourism and recreation to the local community and support the local OHV community. And just being out in Yerington, it's beautiful. There's so much area for you to go, just off-roading, you know, it's a.
Well, hang on, we're not at the
Right.
economic impact yet. What did Courtney have to say on this one?
Yeah, I agreed largely with what's already been said. I didn't think this answer adequately addressed the environmental piece to make me feel like they'd really considered that. And I also agree with the concerns about this estimate. 500 hours to build what is proposed here seems a little excessive.
Okay.
I think the per hour cost is not unreasonable, but the fact that they're projecting a 500 or 600 hour time on this project is seems a little off to me.
Okay.
I also kind of agree with what others have said. They certainly didn't go into a lot of detail on the planning and the environmental. Looking at the map and just kind of a general wildlife perspective, I think for a new project, this one is likely to have relatively low impact to wildlife or habitat resources. Looks like there's already a lot of existing trails there. It's on county ground, and from my understanding, unless they're going to use federal funds, there may not be a formal NEPA process required. This doesn't, just at first glance, doesn't appear to be any real high priority wildlife type habitat. And so I would anticipate that the environmental piece from that perspective would be relatively low, considering it is, you know, new development. That part of it, I appreciated. They seem to be operating in an area that's already, you know, largely getting a lot of use. Already faces a lot of disturbance, is kind of surrounded on multiple sides by other forms of development. So, you know, co-locating it with that generally reduces impacts to wildlife.
Okay. So there's two important things there, Matt. That I think that this park will provide access to some adjacent trails on federal lands. So that would be on, I think it's BLM lands out there. And then if we want this project to diversify, I mean, OHV shouldn't be paying for, I don't think that we should make it a habit of paying for bathrooms and wells, but the dirt work sounds cool. And it might be smart for them to actually do the full NEPA analysis so they can get RTP funds or more federal money.
Yeah, no, and that's a valid point, because I agree with you with the OHV part with not paying for restrooms and wells, because that's what RTP is for, right? It's trails and trailhead amenities. That's why that funding exists. And so that would be an excellent candidate, but again, they would have to go through the official federal clearance process for both NEPA and Section 106 before they could move forward with that. So, you know, if we chose not to fund them fully to get to that point and then recommend that they apply for RTP, which we are going to have an open RTP grant round starting after 4th of July for the pre-application process. So they're not far.
Okay. And then
So I have a little different perspective on that. I think, you know, when we're talking about these projects, and this pops up in projects besides this one, the trailhead amenities piece is really sort of a key part of a lot of these projects. And is there other money available? Yeah, that's eligible for RTP. RTP is extremely competitive. I've written RTP grants, and the quality of writing on this is unlikely to win an RTP grant. And so, I think that if we look at this holistically, like, I'm not saying that OHV should build standalone bathrooms, but bathrooms that are part of a project that, especially like this one, is framing itself as an NATV trailhead, not just the trail. I think it's appropriate.
Okay.
So I actually, yeah. So I see the middle ground on both of this, and I agree with the CXT part, the bathroom. I would go with you, Nikhil, when it comes to the well. No,
Mhm.
but like a vault toilet type deal, I feel like this could still be, fit into an OHV type staging trailhead area. But it is also, yes, a good RTP. But yes, as an RTP committee member, and I guess the chair now, as the
Yes, you
chair of it, the writing would not go over that well, I think, with that,
Yeah.
that group. I don't
Very
think
valid.
that if they use the same descriptive things in RTP, they would not rank
Well,
It's,
super high.
yeah, it's not succinct. The answers to these questions, I feel like, are answering with relationship to like a future well-built off-road park that offers like training and law enforcement services and things like that. But none of that is existing, and none of these answers are related to building a well, a restroom, and the track.
Mhm.
Okay.
The feeling I have about these answers is that these answers were written by, first of all, someone that doesn't understand grant writing, but
Yep.
someone who already is familiar with the project. And so they understand what they're talking about, but they're doing a really poor job of describing what it is that they're trying to do. Because in their mind, they already understand it. Their description is not great. Like in here, a couple different times they say, the water will improve visibility. And I read it over and over and I was like, what are they talking about? And finally,
Yeah.
in one of the letters of support, it talks about how having a water system to keep the dust down is a good idea. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh,
But you had to go really far down in the weeds to get to that point.
yes, I did.
It would improve the visibility by dust elimination possibly.
Dust control.
Okay,
yeah.
dust.
I think that's what we're extrapolating from the response.
But it's not
But
clear.
again, it's not clear.
Yeah, I
It's
got
not
you.
clear. And I was like, I don't know what they're talking about. It was explained in one of the letters of support from someone else. And I was like, oh, I get it. But in the application, that's not conveyed.
Okay.
Put down for this one that they didn't include photos, because they didn't actually have photos of they had like mapping images.
Yeah, I also had the, that's true, so they didn't have those.
Okay. Hey, so as we're developing this, it might be good as I take notes in each of these like 10 categories. Let's just discuss it as a holistic project instead of trying to break it up and discuss training separate from access. Everybody good with that?
Mhm.
Okay. Cool. So then Sean did have some comments on the economic integration, and that's also still valuable. Like if Yarrington had an OHV park, did you want to talk about that? The economic
mean,
impacts.
going out there, it's just, there's a lot of land, so I think that would be I think it should drive tourism and recreation to the local community, and it would also support the OHV community. I feel like it's pretty well planned out, but I would like clarification on the $200,000 for the Mike Powers, and I'm kind of leaning there with you more on the bathroom kind of thing. At first, I kind of felt like, oh yeah, it's a great resource for people so that they're not just going anywhere. But the long-term cost of like maintaining that is probably gonna be a pain, you know what I mean? Like, and actually setting it up is gonna cost so much money, where if we're just doing this trail stuff, it seems like it's a lot less
Mhm.
invasive too and intrusive to the area, you know?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
You go ahead, Courtney. I was just, yeah.
So, well, we just were discussing the economic integration piece and as tourism, I disagree. I think this has very little tourism potential. There are not ancillary facilities in Yerington. There are not rooms in Yerington. There are not services in Yerington to accommodate tourists. So I feel like this project would be mainly for locals. I'm not saying no one else would come there, but they would have to be self-contained in their rig, because there are not a lot of services or tourism infrastructure in Yerington. So there's just not an opportunity for it to generate economic impact through tourism, because there's not tourism infrastructure available.
So actually, thanks for calling that out, Courtney, because I had made a note in my like review of like, how much will it actually, I kind of feel like it's going to be more local, whether it's Yerington or it's going to be local to this region of Nevada for day tripping. It's going to, you know, I don't feel like also that the off-road park, unless maybe it goes into a greater thing, Yerington gets some hotels, and you also, they do a good job with the integration with like the BLM lands and others that'll draw people, but I don't see people traveling like overly long distances to go spend a day at the off-road park and stay in. They're going to come, ride, load up, go back to Reno or Fernley, or that's kind of
my
how I feel.
assessment.
So maybe some
That's my
gas
assessment
and
as
hit
well.
the McDonald's, and that's
Right.
going to be about
Stuff at the McDonald's in Yerington. Yeah.
that. I
Okay.
mean, that's just kind of how I see it. It's not going to be that draw that's going to, somebody from Vegas or California or Utah is going to be like, oh, we're popping to Yerington for just this. I feel like the people who travel longer, spend a lot more money, really are going for like the more trail experience, where they're out and about and going through the canyons and the mountains and that's just my experience coming from
Yeah,
a
from
federal land manager
Yerington, they're going to
perspective.
go out to Wilson Canyon and
Yeah.
that Walker River rec
Yeah,
area. stuff like
possibly
that.
pop over to like the California side too, towards Bridgeport. You know, they're going to go all in that area.
Okay.
That's where I feel like.
Courtney,
Just-
do you know if Yerington has applied or is engaged with any tourism grants? Are they trying or no? Okay. Okay, cool. Well, it is pretty spot on for the localized traffic. The application comes from the this gal Laura Butcher owns Valley Off-Road Racing Association. They're also based in Yerington, so they've got a big local presence there. The benefit would be she also works as a Tread Lightly project manager. So she's kind of she'd have, I'm assuming, pretty good signs and
Yeah, I mean,
well
totally,
laid
yeah,
out.
and I don't know how much support that they would, I mean, at least based off of my experience with them with RTP, I don't know how much. I would assume because that she's an employee that she would have access to all of their resources and be able to utilize them,
I think she would. I just
you know, but I don't,
I
you
don't
know.
want double dipping because Tread Lightly has a grant to
Uh-huh.
standardize signage.
Uh-huh,
And then if they use those funds for signage on
Uh-huh.
this, it's
It would
double
be a
dipping.
conflict of interest or
a big
something.
one.
Well, it's just being used a ton of OHV funds on this one project. Okay. Any other comments on this? Otherwise, we'll move on to number 2.
I have other comments, but I think we should move on. And when we get to the ranking piece at the end, if it needs to come up, we can address it.
Okay, perfect. All right, the next one up is this Lincoln County, the Lincoln County Planning Project brought by the Lincoln Community Actions Team. So it's really just a project that's, you know, under $20,000. It's to put funding into Lincoln County so that they can find the correct staging area, facility that would kind of, let's see, be planned with some forethought, because I guess the reason for this grant coming in is that I have another grant in Lincoln County that aims to build an OHV staging area on private land. And keeping with our goal of developing, city and county owned staging areas that you can recreate on federal lands, we're trying to find the ideal location for it. The issue here is that Lincoln County and Caliente specifically has been kind of, what's it called? Siloed or just kind of isolated down there. And so the project looks for funding to travel to successful project sites. Like we've got Prison Hill here. We've got the Elko motocross track out there. And just kind of meet with different groups and see what the benefits are of having a successful OHV project in town. And then the second half of it is to host some public events or public scoping meetings to figure out where the community would like it. The outcome of the project should be an identified parcel of land that the city of Caliente or Lincoln County can designate as an OHV park. And then phase 2 would involve building and things like that. All right, so I think most of the points here are going to be scored in planning, environmental studies, and conservation. But I guess my question to this team is it difficult not having a location pinned down? How do we get this grant in front of the commission without a location?
So can I just add a little context here?
Yes.
I happen to know a whole lot about Lincoln County.
Okay.
So Lincoln County is currently participating in the 3D project, which is tourism's planning initiative for communities that want to increase their tourism. OHV is going to be one of our key recommendations to them in their tourism development plan. This particular site finding project represents a site for North County. So Lincoln County is sort of divided into North County and South County. Caliente and Pioche are North County in Lincoln County, and the Silver State Trail goes through there. So what they're proposing here, actually, without a site, contextually, based on where they are, makes a lot of sense for them to have this, community engagement process and really build support for the project and get a lot of input on where this is going to be successful. So that portion of the project, I'm not concerned that there's not a site, because I think this really represents a thoughtful approach to putting in a site rather than just being like, well, we have a chunk of land here, let's just make it be here, right? The other thing that I like about this project is the other project that Nikhil mentioned on the private property is in South County. It's down closer to Alamo. So the two projects together represent an opportunity for connectivity and spreading the OHV community and also the impacts from traffic out to two locations dispersed across the county. There's my thoughts on that.
Nice, thank you. And you said that Caliente has been selected as part of the 3D program?
Yeah, we are actually most of the way through the planning process. So for those of you that don't know, 3D is Travel Nevada's Destination Development Program. We selected 6 in our first round. So we have 6 destinations that we're working with through an 8-month planning process. Lincoln County is going to wrap up their planning process in August. And at that point, they'll be eligible to apply for their share of $2 million. So we're going to be dumping a significant amount of money into Lincoln County as well, not specific to this project, but it will be, this project would support the initiatives that we're recommending to Lincoln County.
Okay. Do you think that there's a demand for new facilities in Lincoln County, given the fact that there's like a lot of state parks in the area already?
Yep.
There's a lot of BLM infrastructure there with the Silver State Trail. I think each of those campgrounds around it, like Chief Mountain South, for example, have great infrastructure for camping and enable access into town and out of it. So if we're driving visitation to like these focused areas, does Caliente really need a city-owned OHV park that would stress the city-owned or the city employees?
Well, and I think in this application, I mean, you're right, there are lots of state parks that are real close.
Mhm.
I think in the application, they said that they would be willing to consider a site in Pioche, which I actually think is a better option.
Better option.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't know if there's the opportunity in the award to recommend that. But I do think the need is greater up further north in Pioche than it is in Caliente itself.
Okay. When we met with the Bureau of Land Management down in Caliente in, I guess it was mid-May, or early June, they did advocate for like maintaining the access through Antelope Canyon and access into Caliente, which is really positive because they've got a lot of campgrounds right adjacent to it. That town of Pioche, however, doesn't have very much access straight onto the Silver State Trail. You know, you have to go a few miles north and then come back down. So the staging area and connectivity from Pioche might be positive. And they have like some historic hotels and things like that to stay in over there.
Mhm.
Yeah, the tourism infrastructure in Pioche, they do have some nice accommodations there. The
Mhm.
Overland Hotel is lovely.
Mhm.
And I think the appetite for tourism may be better in Pioche.
Okay.
This is one of many projects that are currently being proposed or enacted in Lincoln County. There's a whole suite of things that are happening there.
Mhm.
Okay. Okay.
And we have a 2 or 3 active RTP grants in Lincoln County for not that are trail related in the sense that they're like cattle guards and things like that to help direct, and I'm trying to remember off the top of my head where exactly. But I'm not getting it.
I don't remember either, but I do remember we approved some. There was
Right.
like Beaver Dam, there was something at Beaver
Uh-huh.
Dam, there was the Kershaw Ryan,
Yep.
and I think a couple of years ago, didn't we do something at Cathedral? Or is it
Yeah.
Cathedral, not Cathedral? I don't remember the names of everything anymore.
Yeah. And then we have a lot of active LWCF grants either existing or coming up, especially for things like Cathedral, and stuff like that. You know, and we are not necessarily in this area, but just in general, Parks is looking at potentially including more OHV friendly amenities at
Mhm.
certain campgrounds and things like that. So if these things already exist, we could potentially start adding them
Mhm.
because it would help with the tourist draw and give people a place to stay. You know what I mean? So
Okay.
I can't make a promise that that's going to happen, obviously, but
Well, there's a few things from this grant. I really like that LCAT wants to go visit other successful projects in Nevada. Specifically in Nevada, I don't care to go to Moab, Utah, and go see
right.
what they've
Well,
got.
it's different.
Yeah,
You
we don't need
can't compare.
to keep it state-based. And then the second thing is the public scoping meeting.
Yeah.
So maybe the results of the scoping meeting say the public wants to develop state parks and
Right.
build a staging area or a parking area near Elgin so
Right.
that there's a good place there.
Right.
Maybe that's the result of it. But I do want the commission to hear and ideally obligate funds for this project.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I don't know, again, I am not as familiar with your program, Nikhil, as I am with like mine, but both RTP and LWCF heavily support planning because, and as someone who has worked for parks for a while and knows that we don't plan for anything,
Mhm.
and then we just kind of throw up our hands and go, we're out of here, we have to build something. Planning is refreshing for me. So I really like this because I like the idea of planning and community involvement.
RTP. So it sounds like it's not their first rodeo. There's a lot of money going to Lincoln County
Mhm.
through grants. Okay.
So something
Good.
like if this is funded, it's gonna be supported in other ways. too.
Yeah.
It's not just
Yeah.
like, this is the only thing going out there and good luck.
Yeah, lovely.
Yeah.
Are there-
In 6 months.
Are there any negatives or like questions about this grant where the recipient didn't answer questions completely and we should prep them? So after I take all of our notes here and we have any open-ended questions, I'm gonna let the grant recipient know before their presentation that these were items that were unclear. So in those same lines, was there anything that we should kind of channel towards this applicant? First question.
I was not clear on their training plan. They said they were gonna do the training as part of public meetings, and I didn't feel like that was necessarily a good fit.
Mhm.
So, that
Like
was,
From the sheriff?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think she added it to score points or something. She just added the comment.
Yeah.
Okay. so
yeah, I mean,
train-
I think training events, once this trailhead is identified and in use is a, worthwhile thing to do, but I'm not sure that having training at public input meetings is the right strategy there.
Yeah. Well, I think it confuses the issue and what your focus is trying to be, right?
Right.
Hey, Nikhil, one
Yeah.
thing I think I had on my notes that I didn't, just looking through, I don't think they had the nonprofit letters.
What I was gonna
Yes.
say.
I had that too. Yeah, I
Yeah.
had a note for the
Okay.
nonprofit letter.
See.
I didn't see any nonprofit. I just double checked and I didn't see any nonprofit letters.
I had yes for the letter of support, but I was just
Yes.
saying, yeah.
Because they had the BLM, but I consider that was more partner.
That's right.
Report.
Okay, so here's, I did discuss this. In filling out this first form, I've got like all of these grants that have these yellow boxes on it, and I'm missing, missing projects, right? So, here,
There was, the nonprofit letters were missing from a few, which I know that's a requirement of the application, so that's a problem. Like, can they even be
It is.
considered?
yes. So would you define government organization as a nonprofit?
No.
No.
I would say,
Would you define them as a profit organization?
I would define it
No,
as a government agency.
Yeah.
Government agency,
agency.
so it wouldn't
Yeah.
qualify here.
Yeah.
No.
Okay,
they have a letter from the Lincoln County Regional Development Authority.
Which I
that's
think.
a government agency.
It's 'cause it's
I don't think they are. The RDAs are non-governmental.
I don't know. Jeff said that they're government. Jeff Fontaine
yeah,
said that they're government. but
Okay,
He's an executive director
Yeah.
of LCRDA.
yeah.
all
So
right,
this is gonna get called out 100%,
it will.
for having government letters of support. I gotta figure out an answer for it. Should be interesting.
So essentially, we'll accept the letter of support, but we need 2 additional nonprofit letters of support.
I'm not allowed to accept any new documents after the end date, so they can't
okay.
change it.
So essentially, it would be rejected.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, okay,
Automatic,
I'm just,
like an automatic kind of thing.
Yeah,
I got
Got
you.
it. Okay.
I got you.
all right,
Okay.
but I'm not going to reject it. I'm gonna find a way to put this in front of the commission.
There you go.
Okay.
So even if it's quote unquote incomplete, the commission you can still take it to the commission and the commission can decide on whether they want to fund it or not and still make it go forward? No?
No, I'm not supposed to. Not supposed to. This has come up on a few of them where I don't have 2 nonprofit letters of support, and it was unclear. I I didn't reject any of those government letters of support, so you have to figure that one out. Can we keep going to Mineral County?
Yep.
All right. So
I think this is the one where the timeline was partial, or maybe that was the last one where the timeline was weird too.
No, this one I couldn't really find a clearly defined timeline.
okay,
Oh, if we, the last one, their timeline is July 1st, 2023 to June 30th of 2023.
yeah, and we talked about that on
Okay.
the phone, so I think
Yeah.
that's a typo. It should
Yeah.
just be 1 year, July 1 through June 30, 24.
And then I had a note for this timeline that it was just,
Like pond funding or.
yeah, it's like,
Yeah.
you're kind of vague.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Connectivity training.
Guidelines.
Yeah, the guidelines were blank.
I had, okay, so I had a note for that one.
Blank.
Cool, okay. I was curious how much of this we were gonna match up.
Or I couldn't find them. I would.
And it looks like they have received funding in the past too, this Mineral County.
Mhm.
Yeah, so Mineral County is a build off of a trailhead project that we started a year ago. So again, county managed. Last year, I think we funded $60,000 or $70,000 just to put down compacted type 2 gravel base, so it
Mm.
gives them a parking area.
Mhm.
This year, they're asking for, a CXT and shade structures. And their scope of work, they called it covered parking areas.
Mhm.
But I think they're actually looking for shade structures that they can place picnic tables underneath.
Okay.
I didn't immediately see that they were purchasing picnic tables or anything in other funds. So they're only looking for the OHV grants to fund infrastructure here. As part of the first grant, and they've clarified this, as part of the first grant, we installed a kiosk and some signage pushing OHV traffic
Okay.
to local trails. Unfortunately, it hasn't. When I was last in Hawthorne, there were a bunch of donuts on the gravel base at the staging area. So it's not been really maintained very well, but it might just be because it looks like a dirt lot right now. It's not kind of finished. Do you guys think there's a demand for these new facilities in Hawthorne? We're already kind of knee deep in it, and so we wouldn't. If OHV doesn't fund this, we'd just be kind of hand holding to find somebody else to fund their project.
One
What's
thing I
their
was
budget?
curious.
What's their budget amount? Sorry, remind.
175, yeah. 175,000.
Can we recommend partial funding?
Yes.
Like I would fund maybe the toilet, but I'd not do the shade structures, but that's just me.
I wouldn't fund the grant administrator at that level. That's a fair chunk of their budget, and this is a relatively, I mean, it's a big chunk of their budget for this project, but this project is a relatively small chunk of their budget for the county. I feel like that is a disproportionately large amount to put to this grant.
Mm-hmm.
I had a question, the 68,000 for the restroom, is that comparable? Like what, is that in line with what they have cost us in the past, or is that out of control?
That's actually, I think the one they're proposing, it's a 2 vault.
Yeah.
And that is about right. The
Yeah.
prices on CXTs have gone up drastically recently,
Yes.
and
they are-
that's the state like purchasing thing that they
That's our
were
statewide
using.
contract, yeah.
I guess.
I know we have, and both CXT and Public Restroom Company, who the state has contracts with, both of them every quarter, it seems like in the past year and a half, have done at least a 10% increase, if not more. Like I know come January 1st, they're gonna do like another 25% increase.
Yeah,
And
they're
they're
pricey.
10 months behind. So if you ordered it today, you're not gonna get it for almost a year.
Jeez. They look nice,
They're very nice, and they're really nice because they're constructed offsite, and then they're literally like craned in and dropped, right? So, and they do all of the prep work, and they do all of the installation, they dig the hole, all that. So I mean, for the price that you're getting, it is it is quote unquote affordable, but the increases, it used to be you could get a one hole CXT for anywhere from, depending on the type and style and whatever, from 19 grand to 30 grand, depending on how intense you wanted to get.
Yeah.
Now that's a minimum of like 35 to 40 start. You know, it's really gone expensive quickly, unfortunately.
Yeah.
See that?
Have you
We're getting
used the-
single vault ones for 50,000 these days because,
Yeah.
well, it's the forest and we have more remote locations. They're just, the prices
Yeah.
are, and we have to get the snow, we have to get the ones that are a little more expensive because they're rated for snow load. So they're a
Right.
little, they have more rebar in them and such. So
Yeah.
it's,
Prices have
it's
gone-
crazy that we used to get them for 20,000.
I know, I miss those days.
Is there an opportunity to use our state contract for CXT to purchase these?
Who is this entity? This is Mineral, yeah,
Mineral
the
County.
counties can piggyback on the state contracts.
Okay,
And that's actually, if you look at the quote they have in there, in
Mhm.
their application, it's the state contract.
Okay,
Because
that's
if you
what I
look
thought
where
when
it
I
says,
looked at it.
it says state of Nevada PO 99 SWC, blah, blah, blah. So they're actually using the state. So that's going to be the best price they're going to get.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, that's what I thought. Thanks, Randy. I couldn't remember.
do you think there's an opportunity to, Randy, you said fund the CXTs and we get that good price on them.
Mhm.
Can we leverage that and say, we'll fund the CXTs if you can find fund contingent on you finding funding for the shade structures? That way the entire thing gets built.
Where do you think they could go to get the funding for the shade structures?
My pro-
They should ask the Army.
Yeah, exactly.
Nobody in DOD budget will notice like 100,000 going towards shade structures.
Oh, but if it's federal funding, the new BABA requirements are killer, man.
That's true.
CXT.
Especially if they're metal and you have to source them from the US. Talk about.
Yeah,
That's true.
interfere.
their justification for CXTs was like, it's common sense that if there's a restroom, it will reduce waste on the landscape. I think that's how they answered
I mean,
this.
that it's pretty much true. If you're going to draw a bunch of people to use a staging area, if you
Mhm.
don't have a restroom, you're going to have a human waste problem. I mean,
Yeah.
it is what it is. People aren't going to go somewhere else. It's the same as like our avalanche damage stuff at Mount Rose Summit that we hopefully will be fixing this summer. You know, people wouldn't go the 1 mile down the road to the open restrooms at the Tahoe Meadows trailhead. Instead, they just make a mess there at the parking lot and on
Yeah.
the trail instead. So I think it's worth it if they're trying to make this like the place to go for people coming into town or just locals to stage to go ride on BLM. Give them a bathroom to use before they head out.
Yeah.
Cool.
And I was just curious, Courtney, it's been a while since I've been out to Mineral County and especially Hawthorne, like I don't recall there being a ton of hotels. Last time I was
Lots
out
of
there, but-
lots of hotels in Hawthorne.
Okay,
For the size of the town.
okay,
They have, as far as room capacity, very large room capacity that is often underutilized, but that is there because of the base. And so they have large influxes of people on occasion, and they do have the hotel facilities and also a few decent restaurants, actually.
okay.
So So,
Alright.
as far as, having things in Mineral County, the other thing I will say is, after a long period of stagnation, they have someone in there who is actively working on developing tourism in the Mineral County, specifically Hawthorne area. Kyle is really enthusiastic. I won't say that he necessarily knows what he's doing all the time, but he is working really hard to make things happen. So there is some movement in this direction. And additionally, I just had a conversation with Walker Basin Conservancy this morning about the recharge of Walker Lake. And so we're going to be, Travel Nevada is going to be promoting that, and so driving more tourism to Hawthorne and Mineral County. So this would just be another nice amenity for them to have available for folks.
Okay. Cause I do know too that we just closed our latest round for LWCF, and we have 2 applications for Mineral County, one for a rehab on an existing park to bring it into the modern era because it's that old, and then to some new amenities at Walker Lake.
Yeah.
So that might be helpful also.
Yeah, that's awesome. Who
And
owns the property at Walker Lake? Isn't it Beeline?
No,
There's a mix.
yeah.
Oh,
And I think what they were doing, I'm trying to remember off the top of my head with that one. What they were trying to do with Walker, I want to say it might have been on the state park part of it, but it wasn't, but it was kind of like a joint thing between the park and the county. They were gonna do like shade structures and tables and work all along the beach near like the dock or something. But I could have
Yeah.
that wrong.
It's
okay.
because I think it's like that the central southern part or whatever is like state and county, but the north part is BLM,
Yes,
something like that.
I think
And
you're
then
right.
just from like a forest perspective, I mean, that staging area there would be the Nevada side of the Bridgeport Ranger District pretty much is a motorized trail network outside of the Wavoka piece, the Wavoka Wilderness part. The rest of it's pretty motorized travel. So Hawthorne's a really good spot to access that Nevada stuff. And then if somebody wants to pop over to Bridgeport for, that connectivity loops, etc. It's
Yeah,
a
I
good
know
spot.
that the ATV, I know that specifically that Bridgeport connection is something that they've brought up to me with regards to destination development a
'Cause-
number of times. They
Yeah.
did not win the first round of
Okay.
3D. It was very competitive. But I think they are really starting to build some momentum. And I know that ATV tourism out of there specifically to these other, to Bodie and things like that is really part of their strategy.
Yeah, and I know on the California side, like Mono County's talking a lot about that, the connections between the Nevada side and that whole vicinity of just having where somebody could technically basically like leave Bridgeport on their UTV and go all the way to Hawthorne and have a whole, perfect connection of off-road available routes. So there's a lot of good potential there for tourism in both
Okay.
spots.
For the destination development program that they just missed, was it specifically for the community of Hawthorne or any other communities in Mineral County involved? Mina, Looning, anything like that?
Yeah, it was Mineral County at large. The application was from Mineral County.
Okay.
So as far as like what they would have done with 3D, I don't know where that would have gone as far as Mina and Looning. I know when you drive through Mina, I think, I can't remember which one, there's a big sign out there that says 500 miles of ATV trails, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So they do try to, I mean, they don't do a good job of promoting it. I think the capacity there is really an issue as far as building tourism.
Building trails, the capacity in Mineral County to build trails?
And not just to build trails, but to build tourism. I don't think,
Oh.
I don't think they have, a lot of man hours or knowledge in that particular area, right? Which is why they would really benefit from a program like 3D, but they just were not selected in the first round. They'll get another chance next April.
Okay, okay, that's fine. But I'm hearing that it has good access to the federal lands, good access to
Yes.
tourism to Bridgeport or anywhere else in Mineral County, Mina and Luning. Okay. And then we had a recommendation to fund the CXT for the conservation reasons, reducing waste on site before it even starts. And then I'd like to see those shade structures funded by somebody else. All right.
I mean,
Please.
it's eligible for LWCF, but, you know, we're
Deadline's
trying,
closed.
well, not only that, but we're trying to build our own shade structures, and finding BABA compliant steel is.
It's hard.
Still that's compliant, made in the country or?
Manufactured in the US. It is, been nothing but a challenge.
All right, the next one that I have up is Nevada Outdoor School, Ride Safe and Ride Smart. It's a program that's been ongoing for a long time, since 2018. And Nevada Outdoor School has some pretty diverse funding. OHV funds them,
RTP funds them.
RTP funds them as well.
Mhm.
Slightly two different tasks though, right? OHV is like youth focused safety training and education, so hands-on ATV courses. So there's some outreach at like public events,
Outreach
like
and education, yeah.
if we have like a trail day, we can invite Nevada Outdoor School to host their road show. They always come out to our events at like Clark County Fair,
Yep.
pretty much all over Nevada if we need the education.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, one more kind of synopsis thing. This is the only like education program that we've funded since 2018. And because of that, this grant has kind of ballooned to cover
A lot.
directors' salaries to finance staff to all kinds of stuff. So
that was going to be because they come to RTP also every year. So I think this is the running thing that comes up with their grant applications every single year with both is the ballooning of paying for the the executive director, the finance director, and the associate director salary, which adds a huge chunk. And that's always, as the RTP, we always kind of call that out. And I think that's usually one of the things we've cut out when we have to make the decisions, because fully support funding the actual staff, the AmeriCorps and the education staff like that are going to be doing actually on the ground, working with kids, youth, etc., teaching, taking them out, doing trail maintenance, doing safety, doing training. But that's a lot for the executive. And I feel like eventually, like we keep seeing the same thing, that there's got to be other donors who can be helping with that. That isn't these funds. Like, it's not going to the ground, it's going to just managing their nonprofit business.
right.
And I feel like that's something for like private donors more so.
I was gonna say, I do, they're located out in
Winnemucca, yeah.
And so, I mean, and they do provide a lot of good, at least on the RTP side, they provide a lot of education and outreach and stuff in that area. But I know like Elko's not far. You could get mining funding.
Oh yeah, that's true. I think their funding sources are diverse.
They have like 7 or 8 listed.
Yeah.
In order for them to continue to push OHV safety training and this type of funding, we're kind of at a crossroads, kind of obligated to continue supporting the organization.
And they do provide good OHV safety courses, and they provide equipment, right? Like child safety helmets and right.
Yeah.
Okay.
all of that, it just hasn't changed very much. It's the same project year
Every
after
time,
year.
yeah.
So how do we encourage them to kind of develop it further or take a step differently?
Well, yeah, we're $80,000 deep in salary on this.
Yep.
That's half of their
Their
budget.
request.
Something that wasn't salary that I wasn't.
That's
real
actually
crazy
quite
about.
that's actually quite a bit more than than half their request, because their grant request is 108 is the request, and they have other match in there for a total budget of 160, but you're asking for $108,000, and 80 grand of that is salary.
It's crazy.
You should see what we bought them in January, Courtney. What, new truck and trailer? New side by side?
Yeah, something like that.
Well, looking at these salaries, my new goal is to be the director of Nevada Outdoor School.
Right?
Oh, Courtney, you and I can talk if you want to know who to be the new director from. I got something for you.
Melanie's gonna stay there, right?
As far as I know, Melanie's gonna stay there,
Okay,
but
cool.
you know.
Yeah. So that's the salary and the continuous like coming back to the OHV pot of funding is great. I think that we'd all do that if we were all nonprofit directors, but I need to find a way to diversify these funds. Really the end goal here.
One thing, I'm totally in support of safety, but I don't think ethics is gonna move the needle in anything. Like, you're either an ethical person or you're not when it comes to riding. Like, creating a video for, like, don't drive crazy in a neighborhood. Like, I feel like if you're someone who's gonna drive around like a jerk, I don't feel like training is gonna make a benefit, like, that much of an impact. And if you're someone who is a courteous rider,
Right.
I don't think the ethics training is gonna make any kind of an impact.
Well, I think the ethics
So,
training is typically geared
It's for
towards kids,
kids.
Okay.
right?
I
So
res-
if they're getting
yeah.
young,
That does
There you
make an
go.
impact.
to try and
yeah.
teach
Right.
them to
I
do
was
the
gonna
right thing from
say-
the beginning.
There you go.
I respectfully disagree because it is kids and we are building a foundation. And just because their parents are that way, you know, I mean,
Yeah.
we probably were all there. Well, you're smoking, mom, and you're not supposed to do that, you know, because they heard it
Yeah.
from the school nurse or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And
Thanks for
I'm
making
a-
that designation.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of, I joke like, yes, we're trying to teach the kids so we can shape them, but also because if anyone's going to have a chance of changing their parents' behavior, it's
It's
kids
absolutely
shaming
them.
their parents because
Absolutely.
they actually know the right way.
Yeah.
I've never seen success getting through to adults as agencies, but kids love
Kids-
shaming their parents about things.
Yeah.
And that's what does it.
Very true.
With all this money going towards salaries and everything, would you say that $287,000 in prior grants would be a success for this area? I mean,
I'd say
I-
Nevada Outdoor School is a successful
Yeah.
grant.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
They're in good standing. They provide clean finances. They
Absolutely,
provide
100%.
clean reporting.
And they
Great.
always, they're
Retention.
constantly out on the move, attending events, providing the education, providing the equipment for free. And not only just OHV safety, but just outdoor recreation safety in general and, you know, positive like tread lightly, leave no trace principles. Like they really do a great job on that outreach. And the focus for most of their stuff is generally kids so that they can hit them at the very beginning and get them on the
create
positive.
good habits.
Yeah.
I totally got you.
So.
And they're devoted to it, like they're
100%.
members of rural Nevada, like
Oh,
communities.
and they
They're
travel-
all over the place.
I mean, they literally travel all over the state.
Uh-huh.
You know what I mean? Especially with RTP. They're based in Elko, but they go all over and they do such great stuff. But I'm with you, Nicole. I love what they do and I want them to keep coming back. But at the same time, it's like, I can't just keep funding the same projects.
Yeah.
You named it this thing this year and then next year it has a different name. Then the third year it goes back to the original first name and then, you know.
Mhm.
Well, and this is something that maybe we should consider in future rounds of questions, is adding a question, and I do this in my grants, about program sustainability. How do you plan to keep this going without this funding in the future, right? Because
a good
we don't
call.
want to fund something for a year and have it be successful and then it goes away. But also, it's not our job to just keep paying their salaries and paying their program costs. If you're a successful organization, you should be developing a sustainability plan.
Yep, you're not wrong, Courtney. That's a great idea.
It's like,
That's a good
it's like,
idea.
why fund something if it's just gonna just be a year thing, you know? I totally agree with that.
Matt, it looks like you have your hand up.
Yeah, thanks. I was just gonna add, I'm on another committee and I've looked at a lot of NOS grants in the past, and we saw the same thing with the salary issues that I think have been well discussed here. I would like to add, I think that ethics, especially teaching kids about ethical writing, should be allocated some importance in this grant program.
Absolutely.
And so I think safety is important, but I think also teaching kids how to ride ethically, and a lot of things have been discussed. They should be given a lot of credit for that. Just looking at their budget, maybe an easy way to deal with some of the salary stuff is some of their math doesn't quite add up, like on the executive director, unless they're working 80-hour weeks every single week of the year. 10% of an annual work year is not 416 hours. That's 20%. Some of the other staff positions, it's a little less clear when they say 10% of the time, whether that's one person or somehow two people, but director of finance is the same thing. And so there's just appears to me to be some math errors there, where it might be easy to kind of reduce some of those salary costs, make it more palatable to this committee as well as the commission, and still provide a clean way to recommend the project, but cut out some of the salary.
Okay.
Maybe they do work 80 hours a week, 52 straight weeks of the year, but there's not a lot of people that do that.
Okay.
Oops, sorry.
So it sounds like consensus here is we just need to take a hard look at that budget and where that funding is going for salaries. And we do want to continue funding that project for the reasons of their outdoor ethics, like the relevance of outdoor ethics and how it trickles up to the families and the parents.
Perhaps
And
a
we like
question,
what they've been doing so far.
perhaps a
Yeah,
question to ask, and I don't know who would be most appropriate to ask this question, is what is their participation in these programs? If they're continuing to get people to show up, then I think that demonstrates a need and a desire to have this program and to continue it. But if they're continuing to advertise programs that people aren't showing up for, then then you know that the program is sunsetted.
1,000% agree, Tammy. I would love to see some metrics for attendance at these different events.
And that's a valid question, Tammy, but you might want to be, and Courtney, but you might want to be specific in asking the question, because they're consistently providing RTP with metrics they're bringing in all of these people to these events and providing documentation to that, but they're not providing documentation on whether or not these are duplicative. Or is it the same people coming back every year, or are these new every time, every event, right?
Right. And I'd also like to know, like, if you have a booth at a fair and somebody walks up to your booth, that's not the same as somebody sat through your class, right? So
Right.
maybe you talked to that person, but that wasn't really the program, right? How many people completed your program?
Right.
And then, and I agree with Elise. I would seeing like not just how many completed, but yes, are there people coming back, or is it, I'd like to see that new metrics, because you're right. Are you sunsetting that? We keep getting the 10 people, but it's the same 8 people coming year after year.
So we
That's
need to
not
unduplicate
really
number.
reaching people. That's just reinforcing for the same 8 people.
Yeah, so over the past 2 years, we've had a really tough time getting participation in the youth OHV or youth ATV safety courses.
Well, it's the same thing with RTP. They're not seeing the same level of numbers over the past couple of years, just because it's just been hard to get people out.
Okay. But we do need that education arm.
Oh,
Sometimes
heck yeah.
we need somebody to be.
And they do a good job with it.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, but again, it's finding that balance.
All right, the next project that I've got up here is the OHV Marketing and Education Project brought by MXT Media. Kind of falls in the same line as the last one we talked about with Nevada Outdoor Schools. They've received funding since 2018. The funding requests have kind of ballooned since that time. When they came to the table, they were receiving one-to-one match with Clark County. So if we put in 100,000 to the project, Clark County puts in the same amount. I believe in 2020 or 2021, Clark County has stopped providing that robust match funding.
Because,
I think they just stopped. They
Okay.
didn't want to do the Mojave Max, Desert Tortoise education or
Okay.
that type of
They
content
gotta
anymore.
pay for a new baseball stadium, so.
Yeah, the athletics or
So-
basis.
Yeah, so the strong match funding has been taken away, but MXT Media basically takes care of all of our social media requests, our like little video production, website maintenance, and like printed goods like advertising in the NDOW magazines or printing these shirts or rack cards, things like that. Unfortunately,
I have a-
Yep, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Courtney.
No, go ahead, finish.
I was gonna say this application is not very well written and
No.
it's to be a social, to be a media company. And I've had a few concerns with the applicant, but then receiving a incomplete application is kind of difficult to support in any way.
I mean, they literally just.
So for me, this is a hardcore do not fund. I, first of all, if they're doing all of that for Nevada OHV, it shouldn't be a grant, it should be a budget line item.
Okay.
And secondly, their content isn't good. They're not any good at being a media company. So paying them to do this doesn't make sense.
Thank you, Courtney.
I thought it was kind of crazy, like 10 grand for videos. It's like how many of these videos are getting views, or is it worth $10,000 in production? Like, are we getting that money back with people actually viewing the videos?
Well, I wanted to
So
see.
we do a lot of media and marketing at Travel Nevada, so I'm very familiar with the cost of those kinds of projects. And let me tell you, having visited the website and looked at the videos, you're getting $10,000 worth of videos.
No.
Well, I'm just saying, is there any metric to see like how many views have they got?
Yeah.
Is it even worth it?
Yeah, is it even getting across
Yeah.
what they're saying they're doing, like?
Because for the DMV side of it, I've never watched them. My employees have never watched them. The
Mhm.
customers have never met. Oh, that's such a great video. It's on the website, like.
Yeah, it's just on the website.
It's, I mean, I'm like, and now with like, I guess Clark County, the match thing, that was good thing, but it's like, it comes down to like a % of match for this gigantic ask. I'm like, there's no money elsewhere. There's no in kind. It's like, we won a bunch of money and we got 5,000
Mhm.
of help. That's like crazy.
I would agree with one of the things that Courtney said is that if they're running the website and there's, probably a state of Nevada OHV business need for having a website, then that should probably come from different funds. Because if you're, I mean, that really should be a contract in
Yep.
my world.
Thank you.
If we have an essential service that we need filled to do state business, then that's a contract and it comes out of our budgets. We would never be forced to fund a grant or lose our
No.
website. Like that you're not setting yourself up for a nice competitive contract. You're not reaching out to other companies that may do a better job or do a same job for less cost. And you're kind of forcing your own hand at funding a grant if you want your website to stay online. Not a great setup.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of with the idea that probably should not fund it, with the idea that you have other funds to pay for it, or provide just enough funding to keep the website alive until you can devise a better way to use in-house money.
There needs to be an RFP for a marketing plan.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Do you,
This should be a contract.
So this has been built kind of since before my time, but there is a marketing plan that was also funded through grants through MXT Media. I have talked with KPS3 about a website contract. I do not have a budget line item for website maintenance or anything like that, but I can work towards that. I liked Matt's idea of funding just the website
yeah.
to do
Yeah.
them.
Well, and I do get where you might be coming from. Do you have like any admin funding that helps support, like that comes from the grant? So like on the federal side, RTP has an admin percentage that we get automatically off the top. LWCF is working towards doing something similar to, because how do you run a $3 million a year program when you won't pay for my staff?
Yeah.
That you require me to have,
Right.
like, how,
So
Yeah, or the other way to think about it would be to, and I don't, maybe this would not work, is to have the state OHV program take some percentage off of the grant money each year,
Right.
off of the revenue
As
from the
an
grant
admin.
money. Yeah, that pays for website and marketing. That way it's more controlled by the program. You go through an RFP process. I'm like kind of amazed that OHV's gotten away with this. Doing the state's business off of a grant program with no RFP and no contract for as long as it's kind of flown under the radar. But I would, it's never good to have to fund a project through grant funding just to do normal business.
normal state business. Okay.
Also-
That is pretty important.
Another random thing is no nonprofit letters of support.
true.
Yeah, and they also didn't have an alternate contact, I believe.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
Florida. They don't have.
They don't have to
Yeah.
have one.
You don't have to. It's not
Okay.
required.
I gotcha.
Let's look for RFP. So I do think that I have 2 letters of support. Again, they weren't submitted as one application
Mm.
package, as one PDF, so I can merge them, but I do have 2 nonprofit letters. Okay, I've got on my notes, just don't fund this project, look for an RFP. Matt, we were talking with Calcami and other agencies even to simplify our OHV registrations.
Mhm.
But all of our budget line items were declined. Any new budgets have been declined for us.
Yeah,
We're working off the same budget as 3 years ago or 2
So-
years ago.
I think we got, I think all of parks got 2 new positions, even though we're working on 2 new parks in the next year, and like, I mean, like cool.
Hey, Nikhil, I'm not super familiar. I'm very familiar with Calcami, and now our tag application was bought by Gordon Darby. Although most of the key Calcami people switched over. And I'm not super current on where that contract stands because I'm not involved in that piece of that one, but there might be a different way to think about that. We can kind of talk offline, or if you haven't already spoken with Chris Vasey or Kim Munoz over here, they may have some other insight on how to work that a little bit better. I think in our model, the customer through the online convenience fee actually covers at least some portion of the contract costs. I don't know how much we put in directly at this point. But some of that is just a convenience fee that's tacked onto each application in our sense, that helps pay for the contract. So,
Okay,
Mm.
awesome.
yeah,
If
there
you
might
wanna
be some
reach
more
out-
creative ways to think about that and work on a different website or a registration process.
Okay,
And if you want to reach out to our marketing department, they would be happy to talk with you about, choosing an agency.
Who's the contact at your marketing department? Or can I just send you an
Caroline,
email?
yeah, just send me an email.
All right, well, we'll just move on from there. It sounds like we just have a do not fund on that
A
one.
lot of blow.
Sorry, everyone.
All right, old Highway 93 staging area in Lincoln County. It's been brought by a private entity, Perkins. He wants to construct an OHV staging area on his family's property south of Alamo. And he'd like to kind of use it as a staging area, but also as a facility for his business to run ATV rentals out of.
So since Courtney was so wonderfully candid last time, I have a real bad case of heartburn with this one.
Okay.
Because I feel like he's getting grant funds to increase his business, his private business.
And it's a private business, not like a nonprofit.
I'm really struggling with this one.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I've only got real strong comments on a couple of them, and this was like a huge red flag to me. This is a fantastic business model. If it would ever fly, is to get almost $400,000 of seed money from the state of Nevada to submit a 30-page business plan and really have no discussion over what the payback for the state is. There's just from a grant standpoint, I would have a lot of trouble recommending this one in any case, any dollar amount. To me, this
Yep.
feels like it's just a handout to someone that's got a business idea and doesn't want to pay for it themselves. Yeah.
Doesn't want to take the risk.
So I have a little bit different perspective on that. You're not wrong. You're not wrong, but I have a different thought about it, and only because I've been working in the rurals so much on this development piece. So this seems to be funding phase one, which is the construction of the trailhead, right? So that's an asset for us. It's not starting the business, although the facility will be the business. But what else I know, and what I have been in, I can't tell you how many hours of meetings with GOED and the Regional Development Authority and whoever else is, there's very limited funding in these rural communities to start small businesses. And what we know from destination development is we can't bring in any money into these communities if we don't have a business for somebody to leave their money at. And so I actually really like this. I'm not saying everything about it is great, but I really like this because it monetizes this industry in some way, right? That's where we struggle in tourism with OHV in general, is it's not able to be monetized. It's not actually making any economic impact in the communities where the ATV or OHV trailheads are, because there's nothing there for people to actually spend money on. The need for outfitters in these communities to give people who don't already own an OHV a chance to come into that community, ride the OHV, leave their money there is very appealing to me from a tourism standpoint.
I would say that we need to follow the mountain biking community on this. So if you look at any rural mountain biking destination, let's take Quincy, for example, Quincy, California. They've got 2 mountain bike shops there that are for-profit business. They offer shuttle runs up on the trails, etc. However, those 2 mountain bike shops are also a good, what are they, like contributors, are very involved in the nonprofit arm of that community. And it's the nonprofit arm of the community that's going out and doing the trail building, receiving grant funds, doing all of that work that the business is already benefiting from. businesses benefit is that they have world-class mountain bike trails outside their door. So in the same way, I feel like the Lincoln County Scoping Grant aims to create that, those like world-class OHV facilities on public lands. And that gives rise to these outfitter guide businesses that can benefit off of the public resources there. But this grant specifically is like a small business loan.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. I think that for me is I don't disagree with anything that Courtney said. But at the same time, is it appropriate for this to be funded by the state of Nevada as a grant?
It's not appropriate, but it's a complete grant. He has like
It's a complete application. And so here's where I come in on this. Like, do I think that this should be allowed? No, but it's eligible.
Yeah.
If you don't want to fund for-profit businesses, change the rules.
I guess I'm gonna speak again because you've got far more money requested than you have available. This is not an insignificant sum by any stretch.
Oh, no.
I nothing against Reed Perkins. I have zero idea who he is or how qualified he is to start a business. To me, there's no performance metrics. There's no history of successfully being able to create this. Worst case scenario, Mr. Perkins doesn't know what he's doing, and he's gonna dump almost $400,000 into something that he's got no management experience, expertise, doesn't have the right people, doesn't know how to market it. The thing goes nowhere other than we develop a trailhead on a 6-acre parcel. And to me, it's like that's not it's not the state of Nevada's responsibility through this grant program to underwrite business and take on the risk of something that ultimately never really gets off the ground. I mean, you don't even have any assurance that like half of this stuff is gonna work. I mean, we're paying for internet costs for 25 years.
Yeah.
Is there an appraisal to indicate that the 6-year parcel in rural Nevada for a 25-year lease is worth $300,000?
No, I had big problems with that number.
I mean,
We could buy that parcel outright for way less than 300.
Yeah, like I don't. To me, like it's a complete proposal, but just because it's a complete proposal, just because you can doesn't mean you should. Like. Yeah, it's complete, but there's other complete proposals that can probably collectively eat up the $600,000 or so available for funding. There's so many red flags with this, just from a grant administrator perspective.
Now, thanks for pointing that out, Matt, because I think the comments that you made about the project management aspect of this and the ability of the applicant to follow through on the project is really valid and important.
Yeah, and I don't know that I would support the project if it was a development company, like an OHV development company, but certainly if someone came to the table and said, hey, for some amount of money, I've developed a dozen of these sites across the West or across Nevada, and I can point to 12 successful projects, and I need some seed money to get it started. I don't know that I would feel differently about this proposal, because I just take issue with subsidizing for-profit businesses without a lot of guaranteed return to the state. But this doesn't even have that. Like we've got no idea of this gentleman's experience, qualifications, like it feels like a very, very real risk that this is just a black hole.
Yes.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Okay. He's done his homework, but this is another application that we received, I think 6 months ago, and rejected it then as well.
What was the basis for rejection in 6 months ago?
Nikhil, I think it was rejected because they didn't have the landowner agreement, because this guy doesn't actually own the land. He's got an agreement with the actual landowner.
Right.
That's right.
Which also just introduces weird things into it there too.
Yeah.
If it all falls apart or the original landowner says, screw this, somebody offered me $1 million to build a
Yeah.
hotel here.
Yeah.
Bye-bye to our state investment.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. Yep.
That's an excellent point, Randy. I'm like, to me, there would be a lot of due diligence, and probably DAG review on this lease
Mhm.
agreement. If you're gonna put state money into it,
Yep.
like that's, I
No, I
would
was
ima-
really,
I would
I was
imagine there's
really,
some escape routes here.
I was worried about that aspect of the project as well, because even if they followed through on the lease agreement in 25 years, we're losing a trailhead
Yeah.
Yeah.
potentially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean,
I mean,
think
it's not
that's
not
okay,
written
the
in as a
maintenance
it's not written in
requirement
as a conservation easement or anything like that would be in perpetuity, right? It's a lease agreement.
Yeah, it's not a conservation easement. That would, if they actually had a conservation easement, I'd feel better about that. But yeah,
Agree.
it's just two private people saying, hey, we're leasing this to you, but they could always change their mind.
Yep.
Hey, Courtney, so just for everybody's reference here, it's if we build any facilities or structures, then the grant recipient is obligated to maintain them for a period of 25 years. That's why his
Right.
lease is only 25 years. Even if we built a OHV park in Caliente, they'd be obligated for the same 25 years. And after that, they could make it into a cemetery or something else.
Well, absolutely, and that's the case. But with publicly owned land, the county or the state or whoever, you have a better chance of that staying. A private
Yeah.
landowner can dispose of that land at any time.
At any time.
Yep. Yep. That's right. Okay. Next up, ride hard, ride safe, and educate from Trespasser Productions. I don't really have too many comments on this other than I'm curious how we justify $30,000 for a 4-minute video and scale that to 3 or 4 videos.
You don't.
So, yeah,
You
there
don't.
That's the
was no,
simple answer.
they didn't
Yeah,
have their
so-
letters. I'm like, it's pure ask for money, no match of any kind, not even offering up some of their time,
Nope.
you know, in kind, like nothing, just nothing.
Mhm.
Oh.
At the same time, the production quality that this organization's pitching is like light years ahead of what we've been producing, and it comes with like a distribution plan, which we've been
That was-
lacking as well.
That was what I was going to say. So from a marketing cost standpoint, this is not really far out of line with what's being proposed, and the distribution plan piece of it, I was really impressed with, because to me, looking at the other proposal, that's who's currently doing the marketing, they're not distributing that content. It just lives on the website, and if someone happens to come find it, good for them. And this was a really, I felt like their follow through with actually making sure that the videos are seen and promoted, and I mean, I will say, just conflict of interest here, Travel Nevada wrote a letter of support for this application. But it was not me personally, but Travel Nevada is in support of this. And it is because of the quality of product and the big reach promoting the message.
Have they done any content for you? I know Zach, I mean, we'll ride dirt bikes together, but have you worked with Trespasser Productions?
I would have to check with marketing. I think yes, but I'm not in the marketing department, so I assume they have, because Keely, who is our marketing manager, wrote the letter. So I'm guessing yes.
Okay.
Strictly from I appreciate your comments, Courtney, and I don't say this because I disagree with what you've said or how you're thinking about it from your perspective. From the grant scoring sheet, like, to me, it's a very indirect link between most of the scoring questions and the metrics to what they're producing. I think this, to me, is kind of similar to the MXT productions, where it's like, if it's in the state's interest to create marketing content and distribute that, it feels unusual to fund that type of work through a grant. Again, this feels more like a contract, and I'm getting the sense that the OHV program is not set up for that type of stuff. Like, we have money available in our budget to produce marketing content and advertise, and
Right.
and maybe that's not something that you have, Nikhil, in the OHV program. But again, it feels unusual to fund just straight marketing, website development for marketing out of a competitive grant program, especially when you're dealing with, strictly for-profit businesses. And when you look at the scoring metrics and like what NRS speaks to as the types of grants that should be funded out of this account, it's a pretty loose link to new facilities, to environmental considerations, to trail mapping, to development of connectivity and loops. Like, I see how you can make the argument that marketing touches on all of those, but you're not actually doing any of the work that's called for in the NRS.
I think, Matt, this would be more appropriate as a contract. I absolutely agree with you. I think I'm just saying, like, from a content standpoint, if we were comparing the two marketing proposals, this is a better one.
I would agree.
Yeah, I would
And
agree. I would agree. I would agree with that.
I agree too.
Yeah, and like you said, especially for bang for the buck, there's metrics on this one. It's cheaper in the long run comparatively. Like, I mean, so in all of those vast aspects, it is much better than the MXT one. But
I would
So-
wholeheartedly agree. I am kind of surprised, and maybe this is because we get audited 5 times a year, it seems like. But I am a little surprised that this type of work, like OHV program, is getting away with what to me is very clearly a contract through a grant program.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, we've got grant programs that we can use under certain context. I don't know that I could ever get a marketing program through one of our sub grants. Like, that would, it wouldn't even get outside of NDAL and go to state fiscal. And maybe your program has got far more flexibility. And maybe it's just a difference in how the agencies and programs are ran. But again, like, it feels unusual that there are several grant applications that to me feel very much like we're paying for state business. And it should be a contract. It should be going through an RFP process. Like, this isn't the standard competitive bid process that a state agency goes through to get this type of work done.
Well, okay, that's valuable because it seems like we would get more say in the results if we had a RFP and a contract.
right.
Whereas a grant is kind of their project. We're awarding funds for them to do their passion project, right? And with these media grants, I feel like we've given very little guidance on the direction of marketing that we want. We've just asked the marketing company to come and tell us what they could provide. And so maybe that's not the right mark. We have to tell them what videos we want produced instead of giving them a blank slate.
Well, and I don't know.
You also
Sorry,
have
go
the
ahead.
ability to go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was gonna say, I don't know if you've seen it, Nikhil, but like, there is a checklist that helps you determine whether something is more appropriate as a contract versus whether it's more appropriate as a sub-grant. And I feel like, especially when it comes to these, because I've been in other agencies within the state where you have sub-grants like these marketing ones, and they're allowable because the federal funding that is being provided to pay for it is specifically scoped for that.
Okay.
Right. And so it's not uncommon for the state, even though it's benefiting the state, like Health and Human Services does this all the time. Right. And it is as a sub-grant, but it's very specific. It's very specific rules and regulations on how they can get away with doing it that way.
Okay.
Yeah, we would never get this through as a sub-grant. And even if we did get it through as a sub-grant, to me, with a sub-grant or a contract, like you pay based on deliverables. There's contract language. And so if you don't like the deliverable, or the deliverable isn't what you agreed to or scoped out, then like the state doesn't pay for it until it's changed and it fits the need. Whereas this feels very open-ended. Hey, go do some marketing, make a cool video. We'll pay you whatever it is, $76,000. And little to no oversight on the product, the actual distribution, how distribution or how the content changes based on what they said they were going to do versus what they actually do. You've got no hook here. A contract, you've got a very real, we pay you when the job is completed properly.
Yeah. Oh, so yeah, that's very different from from what we've been doing. Yeah. A grant is kind of like, once the funds are awarded, yes, it is a reimbursement program that would make sure that the funds have been spent. But if you send me like a reimbursement request saying I spent $1,000 on printing materials and they printed out incorrectly, from our grant, I'm still required to pay out that cost, right? And I'm just
So let me offer a different perspective on that, because we do a whole round of grants. We give $1.5 million a year specifically for marketing for our rural partners. Okay. We can't hire our marketing agency that way. Obviously, we have an RFP. But for these rural partners who we are awarding marketing dollars to, it is not a carte blanche. It's not the money left and we're done. They're required to, throughout the year, if they want to publish something, we review it. It has to come to us before you can print it. We have to say that it looks okay. You can't print 1,000 of something that's wrong because we checked it, right? And so it's not that like the money we awarded it and now we have no say, right? You can have as much say as you want. And especially as this is in both of these instances of these two proposals, this is essentially the voice of your agency and the public facing way that your agency is being presented to the world. And even if they have applied for a grant to make that happen, how your agency is represented in public is 1,000% within the purview of your agency.
That's an excellent point. When you guys are making those 1.5 million in grants, are those going to county and local government agencies or tourism boards or some sort of government or pseudo government organization?
Local governments, DMOs, and nonprofits are eligible to apply for that funding.
Yeah. So again, you're not providing that grant directly to the business doing the marketing work.
No, for sure we're not. We're awarding it to a local entity who is then contracting with their web developer or their marketing agency or whoever it is that they're whatever they've proposed.
Yeah. And one of the ways you could kind of build on this is because I'm assuming you develop your scope of work after you get the applications and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
You have the ability to write into your scope of work that you won't pay or reimburse until whatever they're developing has been approved by you. You have the ability, you have the parameters and the ability to very tightly control what product you should be getting in your scope of work. But if it's not listed in your scope of work, you have the ability for them to find wiggle room, right? So you have to be very clear and concise in what the expectation is. Because my grant programs are federally funded, we have specific language that has to be on all printed material or or digital material or anything like that,
Mhm.
and it has to be in a certain size and it has to be in a certain way and all that fun kind of stuff. That language is 100% included in my funding agreement at all times, to make sure that I will get that. They can't say, I didn't know I had to do that.
Uh-huh.
And I'm sorry you printed 1,000 of those. It specifically says in your funding agreement, you won't print anything until I've given you the okay.
Oh, so we don't have those checks and balances across the board. It's been present in some of the MXT media content, but definitely not across all of our grants. So that's correct. To Courtney's point, we should have more oversight before we actually cut the check.
Mhm.
And to date, how it's been transpiring is we get the reimbursement, we'll pay it.
Mhm.
If the project comes in like over budget or incomplete at the end, it's like counting as points against them after that project is closed. So when we have that question in our grant application, has this entity received funding in the past? There's a way to go back and look at past performance of those grant recipients. But we haven't held up funds based on a bad design or anything like that, which we should be doing.
Oh, yeah.
Sounds like.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and again, it's in the examples provided by Courtney. It's going to someone, there's some sort of an agency in between that's
Mhm.
receiving the grant that then is going to pay through a contract, the marketing company. The grant isn't directly paying the marketing company.
The grant is not directly paying the marketing company, but in all instances, we retain approval authority
Yep.
over anything that is being produced with our money.
Correct.
Both points to me are important for a grant program.
Mhm. And then I don't know, I mean, like that also, like once because even though it's something that's being produced by an outside entity or whatever, because it's for the grant, it becomes property of the grant program,
Mhm.
right? We retain the ability to go out and reprint it if we so choose. We retain the authority to whatever we need to do.
Oh, okay.
Do you have-
Absolutely, 100%.
Because we pay
Our
for it.
marketing grant funds, like asset collection, right? Like we're
Mhm.
gonna hire somebody to shoot a video for us.
Yep.
Okay. That's what the marketing grant is for. Elko, we'll say, is gonna hire somebody to shoot a video for their marketing campaign. Travel Nevada owns that video. We can use it
Yep.
any way we want.
Yep.
Okay.
We can go out and reproduce it whenever we choose because we have funding from something, because RTP especially pays for brochures and maps all the time.
Okay.
We now have that required language on those documents and whatever. And anytime we choose, we can go take that as if it's still valid and we want to print more, we have the authority to go do that
And you can just replace it.
because it's RTP funded. It's ours,
Okay.
right?
We can,
Oh.
we can take anything we want and we can do anything with it. If they shoot a 5-minute video and I want to take a 30-second clip and make a TV commercial out of it, fine.
Okay. Interesting.
Reuse it
Cool.
or-
It becomes proprietary, right?
Uh-huh.
It becomes ours.
I don't know if the website that we have is ours, so. I'll look into
Well,
that.
it is because your grant paid for it.
Right.
Mhm.
So you own, I mean, OHV.
And if I stop paying the web contractor tomorrow, is it still mine?
The content is yours.
The content.
The website itself that is hosting it
Uh-huh.
is not, unless you pay for the right to host it.
Yeah, we pay for that too.
But the content that has been developed and has been outside for
Mhm.
public consumption belongs to OHV and can be taken from, I know it's not KPS3, but that's the only one that's popping into my head.
Yeah.
You could take it from KPS3 and go somewhere else
And it's still.
because the
that
content
design
is yours.
Okay. Okay.
You have paid for it.
Perfect.
Maybe,
think
depending on
that's-
how the grant was written in the case of
Fair enough.
MXT.
You're not
Yeah.
wrong. Fair enough,
That's the
Matt.
holler-
OHV.
holler that-
In a contract, that's definitely how it would be
Correct.
worded, is you own the content. You might be in your specific situation or OHV's specific situation here, it might be a little more gray.
That's fair.
Yeah, I've got some concerns, but I think I'll talk to the DAG about who owns our website at this point. Okay. So it sounds like we've got good understanding, but this project here, ride hard and ride smart, this video project is kind of up in the air. It sounds like mixed requests for funding.
I wish I would have broke the money down a little bit more. It's so vague. 74
very vague.
grand for, is it one person? Is it the best photographer in the world? Is it 5 people? Like,
Their content's good. I think that they play in that Trespasser Productions project. They just plan to show a video for their presentation and let that kind of content speak for itself. And then they've got a bunch of slides. I think that, yeah, let's move on to the Southern Nevada trail cleanups. It's hosted by the Vegas Valley Four Wheelers. Vegas Valley Four Wheelers have kind of taken stewardship of the Logandale trails, and then it's a site in Southern Nevada managed by the Bureau of Land Management. This project aims for them to expand that scope to all lands that are on the BLM Las Vegas field office and just provide like a stewardship presence. The outcomes include I think he said it's a cooperative agreement with the BLM to host events, one event every other month, whether it's a trail cleanup, group ride, or outreach and education type events. It would last, it costs $20,000, and it would give us one event every other month through, I believe it was August 2025. Yeah.
The biggest thing I have to point out, I felt this was one of those really poor applications where they had like one sentence answers that told me nothing and or didn't even address the questions most of the time. So I basically, like, if I was scoring, they'd get a whole lot of like zeros and ones because I got nothing to work with.
Yeah.
I agree. Totally agree. In fact, I have to go back and look because next to access in my notes, I just wrote, what?
Yes.
Oh yeah, that one was like,
Yeah.
what did that say? I
Yeah.
remember that one because I was
I put
sitting
doesn't
there
answer the
staring
question.
at it like,
Sure how to score.
and zero.
there's a couple I put partial for them, and they didn't have the nonprofit letter.
No.
And can you only just have one letter of support, or does it have to be more than one?
Now you can have multiple. I think that we require 2 nonprofit letters of support.
But just a regular letter of support, that could just be one.
Mhm.
Okay, yeah, so that.
Okay, then
was
that one's
good.
okay.
Yeah, but
Letter of support from like a partner organization. Is that one?
And that was like their BLM letter, but that pretty
Yeah.
much, that's all they got.
Yeah.
Okay.
I show we've done 68K in funding previously. Were they something that you thought, good with that money, or?
Yeah, it's this guy's bad at writing grant applications, so I see what you're saying, Courtney, when you say what for access when trails and staging areas are kept clean, they are forgotten about by everyone.
I was like, what? What
Yeah.
are you talking
And-
about?
Clean trails or happy trails?
Yeah.
Not clean trails are forgotten about. That's what I mean.
I still understand.
And like, I tried to look up that BLM handbook, I couldn't find it to see like, well, what are you using to reference as your guidelines? And it's like, they didn't do anything good for me because I couldn't find it.
I thought I was the only one.
No, I
thought
was
it
like
was
Googling it, and I was
It's
like,
just the standard BLM handbook for like trail
Okay.
management and
okay.
trail standards, similar to like the Forest Service. We have ours that's 2309 or whatever the heck it is. That's for our trail standards.
Okay.
I think the BLM one's kind of old, but
Well,
okay, so this one is going to be a hard one. Even I understand that it's poorly written, but it's coming from it's coming from a local club that we've funded in the past, and they've done a good job with their project in the past. So it's like this project will likely rank low. What's the kind of opinion of this technical advisory committee? Like, do we recommend funding for it, or do we recommend not funding it and improving this application for 6 months from now?
So I'm torn. I could go either way on this if somebody made a good argument, but some points that I'm thinking about is with the background that they have successfully executed projects and that this is a relatively low amount of money.
Mhm.
I would fund and provide feedback to the applicant that in the future they need to learn how to
Really
write a
beef it up.
grant.
Yeah, they have to
Yeah,
beef it up.
I agree.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's a
I've
good
dealt
way to
with
handle it.
Yeah.
Conceptually, I like the project,
Right.
which I can't say for all of the applications, like in just a general, I kind of know where you're going with it, or I can make some inferences. Like I support in general what I think they're saying, but they need to, if they were asking for 5 times this amount, I would have a much different view on it for a relatively
Correct.
modest amount. I think it's fair to fund it and say, hey, you guys need to do a better job next time telling us
Yeah.
what
I
you're
will
doing.
even go a step further because this is in, serving our rural communities. They can call me. I'll help them write their grant. I'm basically a professional grant writer. That's what I did before this. Which is why I'm such a jerk about scoring grants. But like we offer grant writing assistance to all of our rural partners. They can call me and ask me to help them and I will do it because I do it for all of our rurals.
Yeah. And I mean, between that or like, their lack of nonprofit letters and all, like they could be reaching out to Navora, they could be, and they have, they did have some partners listed, but no letters from those partners, like the other OHV clubs down there, or even like the local. Because I mean, I think they're, I've worked with Vegas Valley Forward with them before when I worked in Southern Nevada District BLM, and I'm like, they're a good group, they're doing good work, but
Mhm.
so I agree with like, I see the concept. I think they should be funded, but if they ever come to us with like a bigger ask and like an actual like $100,000 ask with like more in it, like you're gonna have to write better and do
Yeah.
more and give us that concept because for 20 grand, yeah, we can make this work. But if you're asking for 120 grand for a bunch of stuff, like, no, I need more. And you need to get your letters and show more partner support and that kind of thing.
Yep,
Okay.
wholeheartedly agree.
And for
I
a
think-
cleanup, you would still need the landowner, like how would that work with a landowner's agreement?
Yeah, the BLM needs to authorize every
Okay.
cleanup.
Yeah. But they did have the BLM letter, so
They have
Yeah.
the landowner letter, yeah.
Cool.
they have a good relationship with the BLM down there. So that's one thing I wouldn't worry about, just going from my past experience.
That's true. The other thing that I think that sets this grant apart from the others that we've seen so far is a 50% match.
Yeah.
That's very
true.
strong, very strong.
Very, very true.
Agree.
That's a
100%.
good call because I've been harping on the lack of people's matches. So it's a good.
Yeah, now that you
The
say
people with 1% match, I'm like, come on, throw some free time, work time in there for like
Right.
5
Right,
days and like at
seriously.
least have something. Come on.
Okay. I think that if we are going to recommend funding for this, the justification that we're going to use is that they've got a strong matching funds. It's a low total funding request
Mhm.
and they have a positive track record.
Yes.
Because Farmies Off-Road Park, which has also very small, like light answers, has a very high funding request, very low match, no track record,
Mhm.
right? So
Yeah.
that's how we're
Yeah.
justifying these. Okay.
Yeah.
Very strong argument.
All right, the Stagecoach OHV trails, it's being brought by Southern Nye County Conservation District. This is basically the Nature Conservancy wanting to construct fencing and fence out OHVs in a riparian corridor on land owned by the Nature Conservancy. I think it's a good project. I mean, the biggest concerns I had with this one is that they're writing their landowner letter of support is for
From
a
themselves.
project. Yeah, from themselves.
Yeah, it's from the exact same person.
Yeah,
who created and
so
submitted the grant.
I did, yeah, I did point out like their letter of supports and like other nonprofits and things like that's an issue. And yeah, the landowner letter being from themselves is a little weird. But I agree, I think it's a good project, and I think that's, we've discussed in past ones, some of these projects of like not just building new facilities or trails, but also those areas of like where kind of like it was that Walker River stuff where we know we have issues with use and making sure we're doing restoration work while also still providing access. So I think that's an important thing to show, like funding going towards stuff like that, not just maintaining and building more, but also those areas where OHVs have maybe caused some problems. We can address that while still also providing access to the greater trail system. So I think that's important.
Yeah, I would echo those same comments. I liked the project. I think there's a good opportunity for a mix here where you protect the sensitive habitat and redirect into areas that are more suitable for OHV use. I mean, there's been quite a few efforts. We've partnered with some of the organizations mentioned in this to do other conservation work, kind of in this same general area. I think some of it's been really productive. You've got some very passionate people down there that want to do good things. And so again, I would absolutely support this. It's one of the few grant applications where we do have some more very direct and tangible conservation benefits to it. And I like the idea of at least dedicating some of this grant funding towards resolving conflict areas.
This was one of my highest scoring projects. I really liked it. Just to point out again, they have a really strong match in their budget. So that, is again, a very attractive thing. From the tourism standpoint, we are working with other partners in the Beatty area to help build their tourism program down there. They have a strong focus on outdoor rec. And also good accommodations. And so there is the potential for, OHV to bring in visitors and they actually have a place to stay and things of that nature. So this was one of my favorite projects, and the conservation component here is really strong. And so I liked it.
Oh, well, yeah, Nikhil, just a random thought that popped in my head. While the landowner letter being from the TNC, the same person, I guess my only recommendation to them would be maybe have like somebody else at TNC write that, because I get it. They're the landowner, they're proposing. It's really no different than if one of my ranger districts was putting in a project on Forest Service land. Well, the landowner letter would be from the Forest Service. So, because we own the land. So as I thought about it more, I'm like, I can't fault them for it, but I think it's something that somebody above their level should write the letter.
Correct.
It would be like if one of my districts was writing it, I would want the forest supervisor to write the letter, like the supervisor above to be like, I support this project on National Forest System lands, not the local person doing it, just so there's at least one level of like supervisory above support, saying, yes, we support this project on something we manage or own or whatever. That would be my only suggestion. If that makes sense, hopefully.
I understand what you're saying, but I didn't necessarily have a problem with, I mean, if they're if the applicant is the landowner and you have to have a landowner letter,
well, but I see where Randy's coming from, because TNC is a worldwide organization and they have a main headquarters in Reno. They could have easily reached out to the administrator in Reno and said, hey, by the way, could you write this letter for me? Or if I write the letter for you, will you at least sign it?
Yes, which is pretty much how it goes mostly, I think, at any level, is like, it's like me, if it's a certain thing, I'll get somebody asking me to write the letter to send the bill to sign. But, I see that, like, just having that one level above, like, the boss of the person proposing the project, so the person proposing is at least a little removed from saying, our agency, nonprofit company supports this.
Mhm.
That's the only thing I could see as being like, that might be kind of nice.
So Randy, are you concerned, like, I hear what you're saying. Are you concerned that maybe this project gets awarded and the higher ups are like, hold on, wait a minute, we didn't know about this?
I'm not really. I think TNC is a pretty darn good organization and I've worked with them. They're pretty good. So no, but I could just see somebody asking that question as like, you're basically saying you support your own project you're proposing versus like somebody above you has said, yes, it's proving you have permission to propose this project versus me going rogue and just proposing things without my boss having any oversight of what I'm doing. I guess that's just my thought. It just popped in my head. It's not really a big deal on my thing. This project's great and I think it should be funded.
It's also interesting because the applicant and who I'm going to grant funds to, I'm going to grant funding to the Southern Nye County Conservation District. And
not-
Conservation Districts is managed by Conservation Districts Program, Melanie.
Right.
So it's a good partner agency.
Mhm.
I believe those conservation districts managers are also elected by their peers in Southern Nye County. So it's not just coming from one person. And it's not just coming from TNC.
Well, and I was gonna
from the
say,
entire district.
I have a contact at TNC and I was discussing this actually with her specifically yesterday and she's at the Reno office and they are very much aware of this project. So at least that part, you know what I mean? Cause she was like, so have you had the meeting yet? I'm like, no, that's tomorrow. And she's like, let me know how it goes. Cause we were wanting to put that on the agenda. And I was like,
Yeah.
fair enough.
Okay. How does everybody feel about the funding of a walking trail as part of this grant? Should we just advocate for funding the whole thing? Everything that's requested?
It's 22,000, right? Or 2250.
Yeah, $22,000 with a 50% or 100% match on it.
I think it's a big bang for your buck.
Let's do it.
I like the supporting the sensitive areas and species and
And it gives that, you know, it gives that ability to say, again, they're not cutting off, you know what I mean, if you fully support it kind of thing.
Well, and it's mitigating user conflict to
Yep.
create a separate.
And
Yeah.
in some
Okay.
ways, it provides an extra opportunity. It's not like they can't, you could ride up on your new UTV, go do the walking trail and see the riparian area and then pop out, pop back, cross where you're supposed
Yeah.
to and continue on your
agree.
journey. So it kind of adds a extra element you could do as part of your OHV journey. And it's not a big ask. So if they were asking for, 100,000 to build a walking trail, that would kind of be a different story.
Yeah, that's right. I guess I think I got caught up in that as well. I just saw walking trail and OHV grants.
I feel like the project name is a little bit of a misnomer
Mhm.
because they're not, because Stagecoach OHV Trail Grant, they're not requesting to build a trail, correct? They're requesting to fence over one.
My understanding of it was they were also rerouting the trail.
Okay, I must have missed
Out
it.
of riparian areas, yeah.
Yeah.
A
like
lot of
basically-
grants. Okay.
Yeah. It's sort of
Missed that
like
detail, thanks.
fencing the area. Yeah, I think it's like fencing the area that people are driving in the riparian by fencing and then directing it to the proper spot to cross on the trail with like that
Correct.
reroute.
Awesome,
Yeah, I
thanks.
don't think they're not reconstructing any trails for OHVs. They're just signing the correct route for
Yeah.
OHVs to take to stay out of the riparian zone. Yeah. Okay. All right. I don't have any other questions on that one. Keep plugging through. All right, Story County, this is the one law enforcement grant that we received this round. It's coming from the sheriff's office. It's also, I think it was authored with help from Nabora. So it's pretty tight. The Story County Sheriff is also the vice chair of the OHV Commission.
Is that a conflict?
He's not going to vote on it.
Okay,
He's not allowed to vote on this one.
okay, just
Um,
saying.
The biggest question that I had on this one is, Story County expects to enforce, NRS 490 regulations on some county, or sorry, on federal lands, on BLM trails surrounding, Virginia City.
Okay.
There's no letter of support from the Bureau of Land Management for this project.
That was
And
my
I'm curious-
biggest thing too.
Yeah, I'm curious about how the federal agencies feel about that. How are the county sheriffs enforcing laws on like, let's say Loustown Road or near those Largo Marcino petroglyphs? How are laws enforced out there? I don't know.
The way I read it, it said there was no enforcement of OHV 490.
Mhm.
That's the
Currently,
way I
there's
read it.
no enforcement. Yeah. But I guess
Currently-
federal agencies, I'm interpreting this question that Nikhil has to mean if the sheriff's office were to begin enforcing this law, what would that look like from your federal agency perspective?
Not having talked to anybody about this, my perspective is that most LEOs, law enforcement rangers, for BLM would be supportive of this. I think anytime that you have assistance in making sure that folks are out there recreating responsibly would not be looked down upon. And that, I guess that's kind of a 30,000 foot, level type view of they would encourage the support. But into the specifics of the grant, I can't speak to that.
Mhm. What about the structure of this grant? How they're requesting funding for a side-by-side and then exchanging, like time at some of their events as like matching funds. How do you guys feel about how this grant is structured versus some law enforcement grants in the past? There's
I
a
don't
really
know about
positive
your, I don't know about your past law enforcement grants, but that's a pretty standard match proposal.
So I'm trying to think like back to some of the other ones and like the issues that I remember coming up. I think this actually somewhat solves, because I think when, past grants where they were asking for OHV commission to pay for law enforcement officers' time, and that was always a problem of like, how are they tracking when they're enforcing, the OHV rules, but then they get a call to go do something else? Are they switching back to like charging to their proper, their normal? We always talked about, so I'm like, this almost kind of cleans it up a little, of that instead they're just donating the time being paid for by Story County residents as match in kind to go to like OHV events and such. It kind of keeps it cleaner in some ways, because I know that was always brought up by the OHV commission about like, are you switching your time on and off at every time you have a response that's not related to 490? But that's just what I kind of remember. I don't know if that's
Yeah.
correct.
No, that's spot on, Randy.
That's my recollection as well, was that the grant program was being asked to pay for staff time. And to me, I'm very comfortable with them. Actually, I think it's a great use of match, and a great way to formulate a grant is to donate the staff time, or not donate, but have Story County pay for the staff time to run the event. I think that's completely fair, and my recollection is the same as yours, Randy. Like, this to me solves a lot of the previous questions.
Concerns. Yeah. Awesome.
I like the cost of it. I mean, I seen one from a previous grant and it was like almost $80,000 for the side-by-side that police department had requested, and this one is well under that. I mean, I know that was a fully built up one, but it seems like they're a little bit more
Realistic.
being lean about it. Like that one, they're asking for such an expensive one. And I also do think this should increase OHV registration and promote following the laws, accordingly, and then also increase overall safety, because if you have that law enforcement presence, hopefully that will just be a positive impact for all the OHV riders and everything,
Yeah, the
I think
level
this
of
grant
OHV.
has, Go ahead, Matt.
I was just gonna say the level of OHV use in and around Virginia City is very, very high.
I was surprised
it's-
that there's no enforcement, honestly.
Yeah, I was too. Given how integrated that community is with OHVs and the number of people that come up from Washoe Lake, Carson City, Dayton, all of that. The density of use up there, having just recently done it, to me was astounding. And then to find out that there's no law enforcement, I think this is a pretty good bang for the amount requested. There's a lot of benefit here for a fair sum of money, I think.
Okay. Okay.
I feel like this proposal has a very good chance of actually doing what it says it's going to do.
Mhm.
I'm not gonna make that note. Thanks. Every grant should be doing what it says it's gonna do.
I had a
But they
question.
don't, is the thing, but they don't
I
all,
think-
you know, and I think what they're proposing here is, I think this is likely to meet the goals of the grant of increasing registrations and safety and all of those kinds of things. This just touches on kind of all the things we want to see happen, right? And I think it actually has a pretty good chance of success
Right.
in those areas.
Oh, well, especially because this is something where as long as they do it correctly, they can provide you with metrics on
Oh.
how the program is succeeding, you know, as it goes forward.
Yeah, so any law enforcement grants, when we're buying side by sides for projects and things like that, they do need to complete a form. There's a whole metrics form about number of contacts they had, number of citations, whether it was on OHV or not. So
Mhm.
that's the cost of receiving a law enforcement OHV grant, is you have to fill out those metrics.
Is it
Hopefully
quarterly, annually,
It's-
monthly?
it's quarterly, and it's only been running for 1 full year
Okay.
across Carson City and I think Churchill County.
But they need to be able to see like how much of an impact or how many.
You're actually having.
Yeah, they're actually interacting.
Mhm.
Well, the other metric that we were watching is if we award a grant to a county sheriff's office, is there a positive correlation in how many OHV registrations are in that county?
Right.
And so we did see a positive correlation in Humboldt County where they had a ton of engagement.
Okay.
We didn't see a positive correlation in Churchill County and in Fallon area because they're using their OHV just for like parades and stuff, not doing safety training.
Oh, well, that's not appropriate.
Yeah. So
Sorry.
that's why we're trying to kind of cinch down on these law enforcement projects. Okay, sounds like no other questions about the Story County Sheriff. All right, Peavine Maze Connectivity and Restoration. It's brought by the Sierra Buttes Trail Stewardship. And this grant is basically it's another planning grant. It's aiming to kind of pick up after a grant to another OHV club didn't really gain any traction. And so we weren't able to move the funding directly to Sierra Buttes Trail Stewards, but this organization has a track record of receiving grants and using them positively. So we're trying to ask them, or we're trying to get their help on planning a number of routes out of
Peavine.
well, let's just leave it a number of routes out of North Reno and into the Humboldt-Toyabe National Forest. So this planning grant includes funding for like NEPA and scoping to identify these different routes. I think there's like 20 miles of new trail construction
Mhm.
proposed
25, yeah.
for NEPA clearance.
Yep.
And then there's another 25 miles of existing social trail that needs to be brought in or rerouted and brought into the Humboldt-Toyabe inventory.
This was one
So-
of my highest scores.
Yeah, so as the HT person, I'm gonna say, of course, I do love this one. I mean, I also love this because Brad had a great idea and a great proposal, but I know because of some the issues in their organization that kind of fell apart, and Sierra Butte's Trail Stewardship, stepped up to want to take this over. And like you said, Nikhil, they have a great record of what they're doing. The stuff they're doing with that Connected Communities project is friggin' awesome. And so bringing on like a very capable partner to take this project on, which would never ever happen or be funded like if the Forest Service tried to do this ourselves. Never, ever, 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 ever. Even the NEPA, nothing, never'd happen. But they're talking about the NEPA doing the wildlife surveys, doing the cultural surveys. That stuff takes a lot of time and money, and it's an awesome project, but things burning to the ground are taking the priority, flat and simple, at the agency when it comes to planning, and that's gonna trying to deal with that issue is sucking everyone's time, especially on the Sierra front. So it's it's a great project, and when it comes down, I like what they've the modifications they made to RAD's proposal with some of that connectivity to the Cold Springs, Lemon Valley area, and Bird Eye, and just like those connections to the maze, and then the fact that the same exact type of planning and trail building is going to be happening directly on the other side of the state line. We can connect up to that, and that's going to connect up to everywhere: Portola, Quincy, Beckworth, Truckee, and that Connected Communities project. I'm like, when you look at it from a connectivity, a loop, a tourism, like people could basically sit there on their, dirt bikes or enduro bikes and ride from Quincy right into Reno, right into a hotel, and spend some money, throw a few dollars in the slot machine, and have a tasty meal downtown.
Yeah.
Well, and it also, if,
Spend weeks in.
with
the Connected Communities project, if this planning goes through and you go through the process of actually building the trail,
right,
you can fly into Reno Tahoe Airport, do what Randy said, and then go get lost in the Sierra for days.
Yeah.
yes, well, and that's the thing
And
too.
they call it the Lost Sierra.
Yeah, if this proposal goes through and they have already developed a plan and all of the required clearances are done, because this is all required clearances that would be needed for federal funding. This opens this up easily for RTP, and there's no reason we couldn't do signage and trailhead amenities, build the trails. If all of this part is done, the rest is a slam dunk.
Yeah, so they could, this opens them up to not just like additional OHV funding in the future, but RTP funding for construction of the trails.
Maintenance of the trails, trailhead amenities. I mean, like this would be a serious no-brainer for RTP.
I feel like it was well planned.
I agree.
Makes it a OHV dream destination, just that connection to all this. Like that makes me excited, man. And,
I mean, granted, RTP can only do stuff on the Nevada side, but still, we could do a heck of a lot.
I think it's cool the separation of single and double track bikes, and
well, it prevents user or it doesn't. It helps lessen user conflicts. I mean, it has so much potential.
I think it's very cool.
And like I said, in that organization, I mean, the work they've been doing, you can just go online and read for days about like the whole Connected Communities, and it's so it's, I think, like, we fund this, it's actually gonna happen.
Okay.
I do have the experience to make this happen, and you can tell reading this project proposal, this is not their first rodeo. This is an organization that has experience and knows what they're doing.
Yep. Yeah. It was very well done. Experience.
I'll kind of add some of the same comments here, because I remember reading this last time around, and the proposal was very well written. The application was well done. I agree with, there's a lot of OHV benefits to this. The one thing I will kind of throw out there is this is a project that has the potential to have some wildlife concerns and some wildlife impacts. This portion of Peavine is mule deer migration corridor. It is mule deer winter habitat. Much of that is much of Peavine is no longer intact. Some of this is probably some of the better habitat that remains. And certainly the NEPA process will hopefully identify and minimize impacts to wildlife, but this is one where there is a very high likelihood, or at least some relatively high likelihood of wildlife impacts. I would like to see some consideration in the design, and some of this will certainly probably come out in the NEPA process, but for co-locating or aligning the new single track with existing roads and trails. And I understand the safety concerns of pulling the single track off of existing roads used by full-size vehicles or side-by-sides. But to the degree that we can avoid going through new or currently undisturbed habitat would do a lot to minimize wildlife impacts. I tried to kind of look at their map a little bit and compare it with existing roads. The scale wasn't of the map they provide wasn't really sufficient to understand exactly where the new construction would take place. But given how many roads and trails are currently on Peavine, I think it's pretty reasonable to align new trails with existing ones, and they can certainly be off to provide the safety benefits. But avoiding going through currently undisturbed habitat. I think what I found a little concerning is some of the project photos, and it's hard to tell without knowing locations or, you know, getting a full picture of what's going on. But some of that looks like they're probably off of or a ways from existing roads and trails. And that's simply a guess, because like I said, can't tell a lot from the scale of the map. But some of the photos of going through aspen stands and other sensitive habitats, there's going to be some impact there to wildlife, especially if that's new track that's already some distance from existing roads.
Hey, Matt. Yeah, I remember when you had those concerns from Rad's proposal. And I did notice like the photos that they did use in this were those same exact Rad photos from when you had those same concerns. So that's good to note. They were those same photos that like Rad had used. And so, yeah, I agree. I think hopefully, you know, between the like wildlife, you know, the surveys and the NEPA process and ensuring you know, if this gets funded, like can make sure like my rec folks on Carson know as they're working on this NEPA to work, you know, with the wildlife person there on Carson to make sure they're reaching out to you all to make sure, because I'm like, I feel like we're all fairly smart enough and good enough at our jobs that we should know not to put a new trail through like the aspen stands.
Yeah, and
I'd
that
like to
was
think we're pretty good at that, and that should come out in NEPA that we're not going to throw a trail through like a motorized trail through the middle of, or any trail through the middle of like the few remaining aspen stands on Peavine that hasn't burned to the ground already.
Yeah, and my assumption is exactly the same, Randy. I think all of us are smart enough and reasonable enough to make sure that the planning process takes into consideration other resources. It would surprise me if the Forest Service proposed building brand new trails through undisturbed sagebrush and aspen, especially in an area where you've got known mule deer migration and winter range. But again, there's so many roads and trails on Peavine that to provide the safety benefits and still minimize new disturbance, I think is a pretty reasonable ask, and would probably still fulfill 99.9% of what folks are trying to achieve here in the OHV community.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's a good planning project. I guess a question for Randy is, do we have any agreements with Sierra Butte's trail stewards? I think that they are expecting to do the NEPA in-house. Does the Forest Service prefer to do it in-house? Or sorry, does the Forest Service have a contractor that they'd prefer to use? How would that work?
I think when they not really. I think we probably have some, but I think basically what we would do with Sierra Buttes is we could provide them a list of people that we've worked with, that we've actually had good experiences with. And they can choose from there with this money of who Sierra Buttes is gonna, hire to do the NEPA. And I mean, and when you put into that, it's like, while they may hire a contractor to do the NEPA, they're not doing it in a silo. Like, they're gonna have to, with the agreement. So if they get funded, this moves forward, Sierra Buttes is gonna come on into a, agreement with the Forest Service. They're gonna have an agreement. It's gonna spell out all the terms and conditions of the agreement for doing this work. And our staff is going to be intimately involved with any of the contractors doing NEPA, the surveys, or the cultural surveys, wildlife surveys. We're going to have oversight. Forest Service staff will have oversight and final sign off on any of that stuff. They're preparing, just like when we do, like, say Sierra Buttes is going to hire that cultural contractor to do it. They're going to prepare a report, but then that report is going to go to Kaylee, who's the cultural, our archaeologist on Carson. She's going to then review, send it back to them for, her input and corrections. And then she's the one who's going to submit that to SHPO. It's not going to be the contractor. It would come through us. So it's basically, they're just doing the preparing. Our ID team of Forest Service staff is still going to be providing that input to the contractor as they prepare the NEPA. We're then going to review it, provide them input back of things we either, don't agree with, or we want to see additional analysis. And then they'll prepare everything and give that to Zoomstein as the district ranger and line officer to do the final review and signature. So it's not siloed to where, like, they hire somebody and they just do everything. And yeah, we're still involved, and we will have a cost. It'll be a cost share agreement, except it's a no fund cost share agreement, since the funds would go to Sierra Buttes. So there's no money exchanging hands between the Forest Service and the Sierra Buttes, but it's that thing that gives us the oversight, the input, and then it requires them to also provide us with either, quarterly or every 6 months reports on their progress, all of that kind of thing.
Along the same lines, I'm glad that there's Forest Service oversight. Do you think that it's just having a NEPA document in my hands doesn't do me any good? So if we write a scope of work, should the result of this project be a record of decision from the Forest Service?
So the result of this project would be, I think it would actually be a decision memo, because this should be a CE, not a EIS, which would be a ROD. But we would have, yes, the result of, based on what I know of their proposal and just what I've heard, the results of this would be, the outcome of this would be a decision memo, which would be for a CE. That would be a decision memo, which would be the approval of the NEPA and basically the approval to construct that final decision. So we would come out of this with, we're good to go. Now we just need to go build it.
Okay.
And within the, sideboards provided by the project design criteria.
Okay.
So
It's called
that's a
decision
huge
memo
step.
decision memo that tiers off of a categorical
The decision
exclusion?
memo is basically, it's a categorical exclusion. We have the Forest Service has the nice ability to do brand new trail systems with a categorical exclusion. So on that,
Brand new trail systems with a CX. Okay. Tammy, did you hear that?
the BLM does not have that. We do.
That was my wow face that just popped up.
So yeah, Tammy, if you didn't know that, because I've worked for both agencies, we actually can do brand new trail systems with a CE, as long as it doesn't trigger any of the extraordinary circumstances.
That's amazing.
We can rock it.
I would might be a Forest
You'd
Service
kill for it.
employee in the future.
Yeah, no,
No.
So I will say each agency has its benefits and its
Yes.
negatives, but when it comes to some of the recreation stuff, the Forest Service has a lot more flexibility. So,
That's awesome.
and a lot easier pathways to make stuff happen. So,
Good to
yeah,
know.
so no, we basically, like Nikhil, this, like the planning, this is this is a huge step, and it's like, based on the capacity we have, we could never pull this off internally. So having those contract surveys that contract NEPA, with us just being involved with oversight, input, and then doing the final reviews and decisions, that will make this project actually able to be ready to be put on the ground within a time frame that we're all still alive and working.
Still alive and working. Okay, cool. Hopefully riding dirt bikes too.
See,
That
where-
too.
Hey,
Okay.
Randy, since you
Yeah.
guys, you are anticipating this to be a CE, sometimes that stuff's a little bit harder for us to track. So if you wouldn't mind just making a mental note, we'd like to be engaged as much as possible with that, just so that we can minimize what we can.
Okay, yeah, for sure. And I think I'll make sure they know that. And while this would be a CE, since it would be a decision memo one required, this is one that would at least require a public scoping on the proposal. So
Okay.
that you should be notified, but I'll make sure they know, like, make sure you talk to NDOW due to the concerns about habitat and mule deer.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, I'm done talking now.
All right, I've got a bunch of notes from you guys. I've got this recorded meeting. I think the last task here is to provide the commission with a ranked list of applications. Do we want to go through that right now, or do we want to compile notes and do it through an email? How does, I mean, I'm ready to go through and assign like 1 through 11 on here, but how do you guys feel about it?
Can we take a 5-minute break and then do it?
Let's do it. Yeah.
Yay, Beth.
Let's take 7 minutes and return here at 3:40.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, thank you. and we'll have a clean agreement template. I'll take a hard look at it and see what I can edit to make it more strict.
Okay.
And then if you could take a look at
Yeah,
it. that'd
whatever
be
you need.
Sweet. Got 3 minutes here. I'm glad that there was that discussion on farmies and the lack of like tourism infrastructure in that
Yeah,
town.
because I didn't even think about that. It's like when I've been out to Urington, yeah, it's a small town, but literally there's like one casino, you know, what I mean,
Yeah.
there's not a lot of hotel rooms
No.
there.
But before this, we were like so focused on building those county and city staging areas that we saw farmies and we're like, oh yeah,
Those
sweet.
are
like, go for it.
Harrington made it. Yeah. Let's do it. So, okay.
But it's good to have that extra input to.
Well, I'm from someone that actually has the experience with it, right?
Yeah, with
Exactly.
the-
I certainly don't.
Because
Yeah.
last time I've been out there, I stayed at a friend. It wasn't like I went and stayed somewhere. I stayed with a friend, so it's like
Oh,
everybody
yeah.
has that.
I go out there and pitch a tent.
There you go. Heck yeah, man.
All right, you guys ready to jump back into it?
Did it.
All right, sweet. All right, I guess let's go from which ones can we eliminate from consideration? Which ones were deemed just incomplete that we cannot use?
So we didn't like the MXT, the marketing one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll get rid of that.
Mhm.
And that old Highway 93, I feel like we were all
Yep.
pretty
Yep.
dubious about.
Yep,
Okay.
agreed.
So I'm gonna say MXT marketing was last because it was incomplete.
Yep.
Old Highway 93 can be second to last right now, but it was a complete application. Were there any other incomplete applications that we identified?
We said Lincoln County was missing a nonprofit letter, but I still kind of like that one.
You still like that one? Okay.
I mean, like they might rule it out and be like, it's incomplete, whatever, but
yeah.
there were other projects I liked less, and I would rather score them based on their merits and leave it to the administrative people to decide how well they have followed the rules. That's just my thought.
Okay. Okay. All right, so MXT was last. Old Highway 93 is second to last, and the justification on that is it's a staging area on private land, so there's no state protections.
Nope.
Okay, any others that were kind of bottom of the barrel or scraping the barrel for you guys?
I feel like we talked a lot about Fermies,
Mhm.
being not so high on the list also.
Yeah, I
Agree.
would agree.
They didn't answer all the section 5 questions I think I had from my notes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And well, and the questions were just very, very brief.
Well, in the 200K for Mike Power, what is Mike?
Yeah,
Power?
there
Is he building the arc?
Yeah, right. I feel like there were lots of questions on Fermies that needed to be much more detail provided before we could say yay or nay, really.
Detailed.
And I think at least a few of us weren't, like the tourism thing wasn't really hitting for
Yeah.
at least a few of us,
Yep.
the economic input.
I'm not saying they shouldn't have a trailhead in Yerington, but if you're billing it as this is a great tourism driver, it isn't.
That was a fantastic point.
Yeah.
Because anytime I've gone out to Yerington, it's been to stay with someone. It's not been to go stay at a hotel. You know what I mean? So
I'll be honest, I've never
Yeah.
stayed in Yerington.
you're not.
Mine's
No.
been to do this and take the 95 alternative to get on the rest of the 95. That's
Yeah,
been
I've
my
done all-
experience with
Go to
Yerington.
Yerington.
And maybe stop to go to the bathroom at the gas station.
Yes. It's always just like a burp.
Basically what Pahrump is to me, a bathroom stop.
To be fair, I've fished in that little wildlife refuge over there. It's pretty nice.
The good thing in Yerington is the state park. It's nice. But in Yerington proper, there's nowhere to stay. I mean, like if you're camping at the state park, you're camping at the state park, but that's not
Right.
generating economic activity in Yerington.
Mhm. Okay. All right, so we got farmies. All right, working kind of up the list.
The trespasser production, we had a fair amount of discussion on that one, and I think it might also be worth a comment on the trespasser, the MXT, and probably the old 93, just maybe a kind of a heads up to the OHV commission that, you know, some of this might not be an appropriate use of state funds. Like not only did they rank low within the technical committee, but certainly probably in the gray on what should be a contract versus what should be a grant application.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like the commission may need to review the eligibility criteria for the projects.
Yes,
Okay.
100%. I agree. Sorry.
Because like
that's-
the ride hard, ride safe project, that's a great proposal and something that you should do. But you should not award a grant to it. You should give them a contract to do marketing for you.
Okay. Okay. I
Somehow
hear
my
you.
boss
Yeah.
looked
I
at
hear
it,
you,
it's so
Courtney.
weird that we're doing all this through grants, and she didn't feel like it was the most competitive way of finding that business partner. You
Okay.
know?
Okay.
My DMV boss.
It's like whoever asks for money can get it. That's a good point, but this is all on the shoulders of our program here, that I'm supposed to advise that commission and tell them that, hey, this is more suited to a contract. You can't be awarded grants for this. So that's on me, but that's why I've got you guys to help me. All right.
I think a similar thing could be said for the development projects on private ground for-profit businesses, especially when they lack assurances to the state on some sort of a return on investment or a guarantee or some sort of incorporation of a nonprofit, a county, a development agency, something that's a little less just state funds directly supporting or starting someone else's business venture. I think it's just
I
a good heads
agree.
up to the commission that to me, that seems like the commission, I'm not the DAG, but that would probably be an appropriate question that they may find themselves in a gray area.
Mhm.
For-profit entities are not eligible for any of our grants. And
Mine
I think
either.
I think there are some foundations for that in the regulations. I would have to dig deep to decide why that was, why it's that way, but I know that we are not allowed to award funding to for-profit entities. So, you know, I would dig into that and maybe revise your grant guidelines. And I have
Yeah.
some other thoughts about revising the way this is done too, but we can talk about that later.
Okay.
Same.
Okay.
Yeah. Neither of my grants are for-profits are completely off the table.
All right.
So they can't even apply for it. I got you.
Yeah, no.
No.
Like, no.
That would probably save us some time.
I think the same is probably the same and now most of our grants are going to agencies or nonprofits. If we're paying a for-profit business, that's a contract.
I see.
For federal.
Yeah, even our sub grants typically go to a university, a research organization, a nonprofit, and then if they choose to take those funds and contract to help them complete the work, that's considered, I think, a little bit more, that's considered acceptable, but directly paying a for-profit with a sub grant, that's pretty confined typically.
Okay, and there's strict regulations around when
Title-
to use a contract.
Title
Yeah, and
II has very clear information on when you can and cannot do something, and I can help you with that.
Okay.
Yeah, and it would be confined to the sense that the state is acquiring a product or acquiring a service, something tangible that we own. In the case of some of these, the state has no ownership, right? It's like the state would be providing seed money for a person's business, but there's no ownership or tangible product that the state is acquiring.
Well, and again, it goes back to if are we going against state purchasing regulations because someone's just applying for something and it's sidestepping that process, right?
Yeah.
Like it could be if someone goes at it in the right way, they could have a serious case on their hands and
That's
say
true.
that we're
It's true.
not appropriate.
Yeah, this would be like a non-compete issue. If another marketing agency were to say, well, we didn't have the opportunity
we
to.
could apply. We didn't know. Yeah, like we didn't get enough notification. Then it could be a problem.
That'll be interesting.
That we're only looking at this one company and not everybody else.
It's not been opened up for an
qualified or-
RFP. It hasn't. Yeah, it hasn't been published properly.
Oh, so it's been published properly according to our regulations, but it is a grant, and the concern I think is Matt's. It's like we're purchasing things that are
Yep.
state owned,
Mhm.
and those
Which
are
is-
exceeding $30,000.
And again, is circumventing that purchasing
And it should be a
process.
contract as opposed to a grant.
It's getting away without having to write RFPs until now. It sounds like.
Yeah.
Okay. So I've done a few things. I've bumped Barmy's off-road up one level and then put that Ride Trespasser Productions at level 9 because it's better suited to contract. Nine, 8. So now we're on 7. Now we're getting to like projects that we're starting to kind of like, right?
Mhm.
It
We're
sounds
getting
like
to- so let's go about this a different way. Instead of trying to like do this muddy middle area, what's everybody's favorite? We did the ones we for sure don't like. What's number one?
I really like the Peavine one.
I'm
that
gonna go
was solid.
Peavine, but I'm biased.
And I won't go Peavine, but it's because I'm also biased and representing a different resource. So
Well, so Peavine's been funded before. This project's been funded to RAD as like a scoping project, and now it's just being brought by an even stronger organization that will pay
Can we
even
talk
more
about,
attention.
can you give me a minute about that? When it was funded to RAD, were those funds rescinded? Did we just throw out a bunch of money for a project that never happened? What's the situation there?
They weren't used. Reno Dirt Riders applied for the funding to start the project, I think, in 2022. And the local club thought it was just like too much work on the planning side and not enough like what their club's mission is, which is like riding with a group of buddies. And so they've now kind of simplified that mission and devoted time to taking care of the Peavine Maze, offering like group rides and events. But that's their focus. So if they come in for grant funds in the future, it's just going to be doing trail maintenance up in the existing designated single track. They don't have the expertise or like time commitment to go through this NEPA analysis.
Right, so I understand that, but what happened to the money? We just took it back?
We took it back,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
RTP had a similar problem. They also got RTP grants and they had, my understanding is that they had a lot of internal issues with.
It's basically
within the
because
group.
Lacey left.
Correct.
Yeah, it's because Lacey.
Yeah.
It's
because
because
So
Lacey
it
was
kind of-
friggin' awesome and she
Yeah.
like ran their grant stuff and really pushed like all of this stuff. And I think they overreached. She got burned out doing it all by herself.
Yeah.
And that was that.
So, yeah.
So
That's-
the money is back in the OHV account. Did RAD give any funds to Sierra Buttes?
So, I have emailed their new representative multiple times and gotten crickets.
Oh, okay.
So, I think their grant is actually getting ready to expire at the end of the month. And since I can't even get someone to respond and say that they still exist,
Whoa.
I'm just gonna let it expire, I guess,
Wait, from RAD or Sierra Buttes?
from RAD.
Rad.
the RAD grant will expire.
Yeah, I'm waiting
Unless-
for it to expire because I can't get anyone to respond.
Yeah,
nobody's
that's,
used it.
I mean, that's part of what happened with ours / some staffing and psychoness of the Forest Service is we couldn't get it transferred over.
Yeah, I can't, I had an email with the new president once last year, and that was the last time I heard from him.
Yeah.
And I'm
He's
just
a
kind of like,
character, but I'll give him a call if he wants to keep his money.
see, I can't even get a phone call out of him. I've left him messages and I'm just like, hello,
Yeah.
so whatever.
All right,
That's why I'm
so,
happy to see Sierra Buttes take over, because things will actually happen.
yeah, it's a well-organized group. All right, sorry, Matt.
All right, so
I'm putting
let's say
Peabody
they're,
as one.
let's put them as one. My next one, for me at least, I think probably is that Story County, and after that, the project in Beatty, I think is how I would rank them.
I really
I
like
Good.
the
could,
story.
I could
for
agree with
sure.
that.
Me too, I can
I
agree with
concur.
that.
Perfect. All right, 4, 5, and 6. Mineral County, and Lincoln County. Both of those meet the intent of, trying to grow infrastructure on county or city land. Mineral County already has the project obligated. They've got the funding, or they've got the staging area. It's going to be built. We have a good opportunity to leverage the shade structure funding with the $70K for the restroom.
I mean, I feel like because it's a continuation,
Mhm.
I feel like that would work.
I
Yeah,
would put
Good.
that above Lincoln County for that reason.
Yeah.
I would put them at 4.
Okay.
And then Lincoln County 5.
Lincoln County
I would
5.
put the Lincoln County 5, and then Nevada Outdoor School, and then the Southern Nevada Trail Cleanup.
Ooh,
I think
what
I
is
would
your
flip those, but
justification? Where do you balance out TOR Section 5 answers and a good match, like 50-50 match, versus funding the executive director and finance director of a large nonprofit? How do you rank those two?
I think we partial funding to Nevada Outdoor School. We just don't award their full amount.
I like that.
and then award the full amount to Southern Nevada Cleanup.
See,
That's what I would do.
I think double checking that budget table, I just glanced at it briefly, but some of the numbers seem like they don't quite add up. And so maybe just rectifying that will
okay.
account for some of that partial funding to Nevada Outdoor School.
But still ranks higher than the Southern Nevada Trail Cleanups.
I think from a reach standpoint, for me, it ranks higher because you're touching a lot more. I think it's more impactful overall.
I agree. Because and I think it's more impactful because we're trying to hit the kids. That's going to be.
that would be 7, Nikhil, and Outdoor School would be 6.
Mhm.
Get them while you can still mold them.
Yep.
Outdoor School is 6, and Lincoln County is 5.
Yes. Yes.
The notes that I have on Nevada Outdoor School, OHV education, is double check that budget table,
Mhm.
possible partial funding for that executive director. For the Mineral County one, I noted partial funding just for the CXT
Mhm.
and require funding match for that.
There is a shade structure grant program that is through maybe the American Cancer Society. It has to do with preventing skin cancer, but they fund shade structures.
That's cool.
So refer them to that. I'll have to dig
Yeah.
into it. It's a grant that came up for me in a past life. And I don't know if they still do it, but I assume they do, but I'll try to look that up.
That's great information, Courtney.
Nice.
Very
Yeah,
creative.
thank you.
That's awesome.
Are we all good with this package? That ranks our applications. Now, the commission just needs to look at this table and assign dollar amounts to what they want to fund. Feel good about it?
Yeah.
So you could bring this to the commission and they could say, yes, we like it, or no, we don't like it, you know?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
I gotcha.
All right, I'm going to end up typing up a bunch of notes for this meeting, create a clean table of our funding package, and I'll likely reach out to each of you with any follow-up questions. In the meantime, if you guys have any notes printed out, or you can scan them in and send them to me, then I'll use those to my help. If you don't want to, that's okay as well. I do plan, I won't change, I don't have to state names, but I will state your departments, the departments that participate in this technical advisory committee. The meeting will be held, I'm probably going to confirm it by the end of this week, but the meeting's going to be held on July 17. Will likely take all day. The morning half will be 11 presentations, afternoon half will be this deliberation. Okay. Any questions for me? Otherwise, you guys can call or email.
Hey, Nikhil.
Yeah.
Just a gentle request. I know that the grants were posted earlier this week. My schedule is such that I wasn't able to give these grants due diligence that they deserve. So a gentle request for maybe a little bit more time
that.
notification.
Okay.
Yeah.
Please.
I would support that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, they closed.
Same
Yeah.
here.
I was just like trying to read and yeah.
Yes, I
Yeah.
was right.
Yeah, I'm
I
sorry,
went back
guys.
and forth like a dozen times, like between different things, going back and
Yeah.
forth. So it would be nice. I do like with RTP or the LW Land and Water Conservation Fund stuff, having like at least 2 weeks or so to really like, so I can find some time to carve out, like, I'm going to sit here for the afternoon and go through this stuff. So my brain isn't like, I remember this, and then I go do something else, and then I come back and look at 2 more, and then yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah,
Well,
no,
and
I'm
it's
sorry, guys.
difficult.
I appreciate the input. Yeah, go ahead, Courtney.
It's difficult to do the research. I can read the grants, but then I want to, if you're doing a proposal about this, I want to go and research your other organizations that
Yeah.
you've worked with, or I want to go and check if you're saying you're a content producer, and I need to go look at your website, and I like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. I didn't have a chance to really look at any of the budgets for any of it because I was so focused on trying to get to it.
I feel like it was just enough time to like get your feet wet and get like a feel for it, but
Yeah.
not really like, I would have loved to spend more time, especially
Same.
it being my first time,
Same,
like to be
same,
like,
yeah.
what's a complete grant, what's not, and
Yeah, be able to read the regulations really thoroughly and digest it, and then, I didn't have enough time, like, I assume, Nikhil, you have a handbook with like guidance of some kind?
No, I don't have a handbook with guidance.
Never mind, okay. We were clear on that.
NRS.
Like,
That's
it
the guidance, right?
Yeah, I've got NRS and NAC.
I can help you with that.
But hang on, a handbook for the technical advisory committee to follow,
Yeah.
or for the applicants?
So,
I've got
I
one for
think
the
that'd be
applicants.
strong, yeah, for us, like some
Uh-huh.
kind of guidance of like, this is a strongly worded answer, and this is that one sentence one. I would maybe an example of like a 10 answer and
Uh-huh.
I think it would help with scoring,
You know what I mean?
consistency and things like that, but
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, and I think not even a whole handbook, because that makes it sound like a lot of reviewing,
Yeah.
True.
but like a scoring rubric.
cheat
Here are the
sheet.
things
Yeah.
that we really are looking for here. And what was in this form was actually pretty helpful. Like, did they answer this, and this?
Yeah.
But it would be good to, have, how are those weighted? It was difficult for me to determine, and some of these grants were program grants, and some of these grants are infrastructure grants.
yeah.
And so
They
it
get
was
weighted
really,
differently when they don't have certain
it was,
components.
yeah, so it
Mhm.
looks like they scored really shitty because they didn't have a plan for training, but their thing
Right.
didn't have anything to do with training. They were scoping
Yeah.
a project, right?
Correct.
And so that made it really difficult to score these projects because we were comparing apples to oranges in a lot of cases. So if there were a guideline of our priority is infrastructure projects, and if there happen to be scoping projects, we'll think about it. Or our priority is on training, or separate them and say, we've got, $100,000 for training projects and $100,000 for infrastructure projects.